This is the August 18th, 2022 meeting. If you,
I don't think they're,
can you hear me now?
microphones are on.
Farragut Municipal Planning Commission, August the 18th, 2022.
Not working. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. So we're going to start out with the approval of the agenda.
Any changes?
There aren't any changes. No.
Move to approve.
Second.
Approval of the minutes of the July 21st, 2022 meeting.
Recommends approval of those.
So moved.
Second.
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Also tonight, if you wish to address an item that's on the agenda, please get a card from Mr. Shipley to fill out with your name and the item that you're interested in talking about. And you'll be called on when that item comes up on the agenda. And then if you are here for citizens' comment, which is later on in the agenda, also fill out a comment at that time. Also a card from Mr. Shipley. And you'll be called on when we get to citizens' comments. We'll start out with item number 3, discussion and public hearing on approval of the preliminary plat for the Little Turkey Creek Greenway extension from Brookmere Subdivision to Sheffield Subdivision, Town of Farragut. Applicant.
Good evening. For the last several years,
Who are you?
oh, I'm sorry, I'm Daryl Smith, I'm town engineer. Sorry about that. For the last several years, we've been looking at ways to construct a greenway along Virtue Road from Kingston Pike all the way down to Boyd Station and points west from there. With completion of the Virtue Road project and the Brookmere subdivision, we've got the first 2 legs in place all the way to the southern edge of Brookmere. This project will extend from the new pedestrian bridge along Little Turkey Creek on the east side and tie into the Sheffield Trail that crosses back across Little Turkey Creek to Virtue Road directly across from Vista Subdivision. We have Jason Elliott from LDA Engineering with us tonight if you have any questions. I'm not sure what all to do other than turn it over to questions. Unless, Jason, did you have comments to begin? Or?
Are the plans part of the, okay.
Yeah, we have cross sections and profiles, and so whatever you need, I think's in there.
Does anybody on the planning commission have any questions for Daryl?
I have a question. On one of the sheets here, it depicted a little parking area and a walking path. It looked like it was on sheet 6. And I was trying to figure out, it was inset into the drawing. And I was not quite sure where it actually goes. Because it didn't look like there was room enough from the bridge out to Virtue Road for it to fit, but maybe you can explain that to me.
Yes, sir. If you look
And
at
before you start, can you tell us who you are and give us an address?
yes, ma'am. Jason Elliott, 2970 Sagegrass Drive, Louisville, and I'm with LDA Engineering, the design engineer for the project. If you look at the kind of the right side of that top panel, there's a match line that runs horizontal. That match line that's just to the west of the bridge ties into the inset. So the inset is basically a continuation of beyond that match line.
Yeah, so I cut it out.
That's perfect.
I inset it in. It doesn't look like it fits between the bridge and Virtue Road, but I'm assuming it does, huh?
It does fit, yes.
All right.
It's a different scale, I believe.
No, it is the same scale.
Is it the same scale?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It is a tight fit, though, I'll say that. And that's why we could only fit 3 parking spaces in
I
there.
have one more question, and I don't know if it's for Daryl or for you, but in walking through that proposed path, there's a ton of debris in the creek. Does this project intend to kind of clear any of that debris out of the creek?
Do you want to address
I can handle that.
I mean, huge trees. There's one place where it's dammed up about 8 feet high and there's just.
That's something our Public Works Department could handle. I wouldn't put it in there as part of this project, though, but because so much of it can be done with our Public Works.
Sounds like a good wintertime project when they're not mowing.
Working out in the creek,
It's
maybe a spring or fall.
Thank you.
Does anybody
Anybody
want me to go over the basics of the project, or?
That would be good.
Okay. So the Greenway Connection, it's about almost 1,500 feet long, just over a quarter of a mile. It's very steep terrain through this area, pretty heavily wooded for the most part. And so we did have to get creative in how we fit the flat greenway on essentially a steep existing slope. And you'll see on the typical sections there, there will be a fairly sizable retaining wall for a good portion of the project. We are using both asphalt and concrete to construct the trail. The reason being, originally we were going to just do all asphalt, but the last about 500 feet are concrete because we had to go with a steeper profile through that area. And with the steeper profile, we have to have 5-foot flat landings for ADA accessibility for wheelchairs and such. So those landings are easier to build with concrete. It's nearly impossible to pave asphalt with an 8% slope and then a flat spot and then an 8% slope. And you can see that in the profile. If you look at the the profile towards the end of the project, you'll see the slopes that I'm talking about. But that's the reason for the two different surface materials. The basics of the cross-section, it's an 8-foot wide paved trail with 1-foot shoulders on either side, and then variable cross slopes tying in anywhere between 1.5 to 1 and 3 to 1, depending on how steep the existing slope was in that area. And that's what these typical sections show, essentially. The different cross sections for each section of the project.
Anybody else on the planning commission have questions or comments? Anybody in the audience have a question or comment?
Mark, do we have any comments?
I didn't have anyone sign up for this one, no.
Okay.
Nobody signed up, then we're good to go.
I move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 4, discussion and public hearing on the approval of a final plat for the former Huntley property off Union Road, parcel 036, 03602, 03603, 03404, tax map 142, 25.74 acres, 6 lots, zoned R-1 and R-2, Ryan Lynch, applicant.
Yeah, this is a small estate lot subdivision off of the east side of Union Road, east of Everett Road. The developer wanted to create a very rural type subdivision, and basically he came before the Planning Commission back in July of 2021 with the preliminary plat and requested a number of variances to help provide for that rural character, like reduced street width, open drainage system, things like that. And they've been working on putting the improvements in, had to redo the roadway completely, bring in water lines. It's a pretty involved project. But now they're requesting approval for the final plat that would allow them to go ahead and re-record these lots. This would be a public street, a 20-foot wide public street, and the staff does recommend approval of this final plat, subject to the 6 comments that were remaining, and those are relatively standard comments related to most final plats.
And you're okay with all these subject twos?
Yes, I agree with all of them.
Anybody, do you have anything?
No, ma'am.
I did not have anybody sign up for this one, no.
Okay. Does anybody on the planning commission have any questions or comments? Case, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
He did.
Thank you.
Item number 5, discussion and public hearing on approval of a preliminary plat for the Westerly subdivision, parcels 8.01, 9, and 10.2, tax map 152, 8.74 acres, 12 lots, zone R-1 and R-2, BHN-P applicant.
Yes, this item was actually postponed in June. There were some concerns about the proposed access onto Champions Point. It's a small subdivision, and so basically we asked the applicant to go back and look at this access point. At the time, it did not meet the site distance for this type of street. It was less than 200 feet of site distance. So there were 3 variances that were requested as part of this preliminary plat, and we of course didn't act on those. If we want to move forward with this evening, we'll have to act on those variances. Before we take action on the preliminary plat itself, just a reminder, those variances were reducing the street width from 26 to 24 feet, a variance on the length of the cul-de-sac from 500 feet to 902 feet, and then a variance from the requirement to have more than one access into and out of a development. These variances were looked at a concept site plan level back in August of 2021, and generally the commission understood the position on the variances, but we would have to take action on those individually before moving forward with the preliminary plat. The main concern really has been the access point onto Champions Point. At the June meeting, there was discussion about the traffic impact study that was provided by the applicant. It did make some recommendations on signage, and basically they were asked to go back and relook at this. So since the June meeting, the applicant has gone back out in the field and conducted more survey work, and they presented as part of their latest revision basically moving the access further south to about 25 feet from the southern property line, and then actually raising the grade of the road that goes into the subdivision by about 6 inches. And that gives it a site distance of at least 200 feet along the access point on Champions Drive. In addition to those modifications, also including the signage and the recommendations that were in the original traffic impact study. This was reviewed by the town engineer, and he's comfortable with what they're proposing based on the number of lots and the low traffic volumes that are actually on Champions Point. Again, that may be something you all want to discuss first before we look at the variances, because the variances are related to the access. So if you all have any questions on the actual access, the applicant's here, town engineer's still here. So they could probably better answer those than I could, but that's kind of an overview of where we're at this point. Now, I do have several people that have signed up for this.
Okay.
I don't mean to, I know I'm not allowed to interrupt, but we can't hear anything. I know your microphone
I can hear it,
I don't think that,
but they're not turned up.
yeah, there's no volume going on here.
Does that help any? It didn't help?
Hear us?
Test, test, test,
I think
test.
this one's on, Mark. That's a little weird. Thank you. Little.
Test, test.
And just fine.
Yeah, I guess it's just mine. I'll try to talk louder.
Well, is this one, I don't know that this is working any better. You want us to yell? We love to do that.
Sorry, yeah, I'll just let me know if you can't hear me, because I'm kind of a low talker anyway. Okay, I'll turn it over to, if there's any questions first for the applicant, and then if you want to have the citizens come forward that's asked to sign to speak
Okay.
to this, and we can do that.
Okay, Mark, anybody on the planning commission first have any questions for Mark?
Yours is
That better?
Yeah, this is working fine.
Yeah, I think it's better now. Yes. Yeah, there it is. I didn't do anything, so I don't have any idea why it's better.
So, anybody on the planning commission have any questions for Mark before we move on?
No.
No. Okay, let's,
Yeah, thank you very much. You guys can hear me. I can hear myself. So, yeah, hopefully you can. My name is Rodney Phillips, 1540 Lawrence Glen Lane, Knoxville. I'm representative of the developer on this project. And before I get started, I'd like to say something that's very cool to me. The first item on the agenda, Mark, you were around. You remember the first item on the agenda, I actually built that bridge at Sheffield, crossing the creek, and we developed first phase. And that was probably 2008. So it's very cool to see things kind of come together and plans moving forward and how things are progressing in that. So that's kind of neat.
Government moves slow.
I'm sorry, sir?
The government moves slow.
Yeah, and the one thing that I can see, and I haven't had a chance to walk across it, but it looks like it's holding up pretty well. It's been a while, so it looks like it's still a good bridge.
good shape,
So,
yeah.
Good deal. You guys have looked at this. Now this is our third time in looking at this project, and as a developer, I can stand up here and I can go, I think it's going to be a good project. I believe. Seems to me like we're going to be okay. I can use all those kind of things, but instead, I would like to concentrate on what we know for sure. And those are a couple things that are pretty clear. Number one, we know that this residential portion is zoned R2, which gives us the right to do a few more lots than what we've actually brought into this. We're staying underneath the zoning ordinance here. We're not asking to be rezoned. We've got 12 lots, which are going to be high-end residential lots. There's something that everyone's going to be proud of. These are going to be $1 million+ homes in this community. We're not asking for high density. We're not asking for townhomes. And so we believe that in keeping below that, that zoning ordinance, that we're doing a very good thing out here. We think that brings value to the property. Number two, we know that the commission asked us to go back and look at the site distance on Champions Point. Our initial submission had us more centering that property. We were able to go back and do that, re-engineer that road, and through some sound data, some sound engineering, we know that we now meet the technical requirements to do that. I think it required 200 feet. We're a little bit over that. We're about 205 feet according. And I wish my traffic engineer could make tonight, but he, probably like a lot of dads, is touring college campuses with a daughter, I believe, these next few days. So he wasn't able to make it, but he did write a very good letter summarizing those conclusions. And we do have some very good data from our traffic study on that. And I understand. I've previous meetings I've heard, people speed up and down that road all the time. They fly on that road, and I get it. As a homeowner, I can sometimes be playing basketball with my kids in the driveway or out pulling weeds, and I see a car go by fast. That car is going to get my attention more than a car that goes by slow or goes by at normal speed. We're trained to see those outliers. So I understand where people are coming from when they say, well, will people do that? Because that's what your brain picks up on. But our data and the science that we've got from this says that about 85% of the people go through there are staying well under the speed limit. And so there's going to be outliers, obviously, but we feel based on that data that we can engineer a safe intersection here. And thirdly and final, the commission had talked during the last meeting about potentially doing a connection through the commercial portion of this project on the Kingston Pike. And obviously that changes the feeling of it quite a bit. One thing we went back, we did what we were asked to do. We went back, we looked at the grades, we run the numbers, and my initial estimate on it was that we'd have to stay fairly flat going through the commercial portion because we can't start ramping up. It's a commercial portion, it's parking lot. So we had to stay fairly flat coming through where the red arrow is on there. And we couldn't start overcoming that grade until we get to the back of that commercial portion. Mm-hmm. Well, if you run the quick numbers on that, it looks like that road is about 17% would be how steep it would have to be and that's way steeper than what any public road would be allowed to do. You could barely pave that. We had our engineering team, Ms. Katie Patterson, look at that and come up with some other solutions. She's run some numbers on it, but
What's that?
quite frankly, in building that in there, we would end up with a mass grading project. We would end up with mass clearing, mass grading. It would look more like a parking lot than a subdivision in doing so. So we asked that, and I know it's not always easy to see if you're not familiar with the topography of the site and you're looking at a 2D drawing. But we ask that the commission does take that into consideration, the fact that it would change the character. We would lose a lot more tree cover, and we would have to do a lot more mass grading to take that in. So to summarize, unless you guys have any specific questions, like I said, I do have my engineering team here. We are meeting, per your request, we are meeting the technical requirements to build this project. And we just ask that you keep that in mind. We've done some sound engineering on this thing, and it states that this is going to be okay. This is going to be fine. So.
And Rodney, does that line up the proposal that you have on this plan directly with the Walters property?
The initial,
I couldn't tell.
Mr. Russ, the initial, and her property isn't marked on there, but where we had the driveway initially was further
North.
to the north,
Yep.
west, north. It was further up. And I understood after one conversation with Ms. Walters and talking to her after the last planning commission meeting, that she would like to see that line up more with her driveway. And I completely understand. And the biggest thing that I see is that, and if I'm a homeowner too, cars pulling out of that subdivision, I wouldn't want them shining lights, setting directly shining lights in the front of my house. So this reiteration pulls it down far enough to where that's not the case. They're not shining in her house anymore. I think we couldn't go far enough to match her driveway, but we at least got far enough down to where it's not a direct thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the planning commission have any questions?
I have something that I'd like to hear from our town engineer on. If he could step up to the...
Yes, Mayor.
Darrell, he discussed the grade of the topo difference between the flat,
Right.
which the parking lot has to be kept ADA compliant, and then there would be a steep rise up to the grade. What is our typical maximum that you see?
Typically, it's about 12. We do allow up to 14. On a street like this, probably up to 14.
And it's 17?
There, that's just the baseline calculation.
Okay.
So that's roughly.
Okay, I wanted to hear what you allowed up to, okay?
I would have a problem with a 17% grade.
Okay,
I think
thank
they
you.
would too, so.
That's all I have, thank you.
Anybody else on the planning commission have any questions?
Not this time. People that signed up. The first person that signed up is Stacy Walters. And after her, it's Drew McDonald.
Could you show on that map where you're talking about that the road is going to come in from Champions Point? I've never seen it before.
That's right. There. This is Champions right here, and then this is the road.
Where
Yep.
along Champions Point is that going to be?
I think,
Right there, Ms. Walters.
Ms. Walter, your driveway's roughly here at, well, let me
There's a
erase it.
drawing here that shows her house location, if you go in a little bit more. Preliminary not approved for construction, the KUB drawing.
I don't have that
You
in
don't
the
have it?
PowerPoint, no. I didn't put all of them in
Okay.
there. So we
Do you
don't-
have anything that would show more of the road?
No.
As the homeowner, I could explain where the location is. So the first initial proposed location was at,
Oh, can we have your name and address?
sorry, Stacy Walters, 124 Champions Point. Thank you. So the first when you go down Champions Point, there's a brick rancher. It's the first house on your right. That's where we live. The proposed location for the first entrance was at the very top of the hill, opposite my house, before you start to go down that road into the cul-de-sac. The second proposed location has been moved further southward down towards our driveway. Does that help?
Where the pond is?
Where the pond is.
One thing to note on this is everybody's got 5 minutes, so I'll just want to make that announcement before, so y'all are aware of it.
Thank you. First of all, this is not the first time we've come before this commission to talk about these safety issues, and we understand that you are listening to us and take our concerns seriously, so we want to thank each of you. If you'll remember at the last meeting, because of the location of this entrance posing a significant safety hazard, we had asked the commission, do one of two things. Either move the entrance further down south to where, at a minimum, it's opposite our driveway. Further south would be better for sight distance. Or, since the developer owns the property on Kingston Pike, relocate the entrance there. After I asked that, the shot engineer stood up and said that moving that entrance south would not increase site visibility. And so it was interesting to see that that topic came up again this month as a new proposal to where this intersection should be. So, Mark, I had sent something with some site visibility and traffic study information. Is that something that can be pulled up?
I didn't put it in the PowerPoint, but I did distribute that earlier today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you look at this graph, okay, and it has the national safety standards on it as well as summary of the traffic from the traffic study that Farragut did last summer. Location 1, you've got 167 feet of sight distance. That's the original location at the top of the hill. It barely meets stopping sight distance at 25 miles per hour, and it fails to meet the intersection sight distance, which SHOD refers in their transportation impact letter as intersection sight distance being the desirable visibility distance standard for evaluating the safety of an intersection. So then the second proposed location that's before the commission tonight, which is more opposite the driveway, it only meets stopping sight distance by 0.63 of a feet at 30 miles an hour. It does not meet intersection sight distance at all, which is your gold standard for measuring safe intersections. And it doesn't even begin to account for the 266 people who, over that 14-day traffic study, drove 30 miles per hour or faster. In fact, for 35 miles per hour, you would need 390 total feet of intersection sight distance. They've only got 200 here. So it just doesn't make sense for this intersection to be located on Champions Point, especially when there's an alternative location with a built-in safety measure, a stop traffic light on Kingston Pike at Old Stage Road. And the Homeowners Association Board agrees, and so do 212 families. They signed this letter that went to the Planning Commission. It was delivered to you on Monday. And in it, there were 212 families. 174 of those families were Foxton resident families, and 68 of those families live either on Champions Point or St. Andrews Drive or in the cul-de-sacs off St. Andrews. They drive this road every day. They see the inherent danger that an intersection like this could cause. The remaining signatures on there were club members who take Champions Point to get to the club and also see the inherent danger. Given that the property owner who owns the property across the street from us is unwilling to sell more frontage to move the Westerly subdivision down, I just don't see that there's really any other safe alternative than to move this location to Old Stage Road and Kingston Pike. And that's what we're asking you to vote on tonight. I mean, please do it for the 212 families that signed this letter. And please do it for the 12 families that are going to live in Westerly, who are going to buy these $1 million homes.
Clock, sorry.
That's fine. These families purchasing home in Westerly, they deserve a safe intersection every time they leave their home and every time they come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Drew McDonald was the next speaker, and after Drew, Adam Kurthlink.
I'm Drew McDonald, 12215 South Foxton Drive. I'm president of the Homeowners Association. And everything Stacy said, I agree with 100%. I don't want to take a lot of your time. I walked this intersection. Bob and I and Stacy, Bob Thornton, I asked Bob Thornton, a commercial realtor friend of ours, to speak to the other property owner because he's a personal friend of hers. And my goal was, let's see if we can help the Shods get this thing fixed where it's not a danger to the residents or the danger of Foxton folks who live there. And unfortunately, we couldn't get her to budge. And I hate that for everybody. But I have to agree with Stacy that if that intersection goes right there, guys, if something happens down the road and some child pulls out or somebody comes flying down that hill and somebody gets killed or maimed at this intersection, all of us here tonight, we are going to know what happened. And I hate that. I just don't think it's smart to put an intersection at a place where somebody can be going 50 miles an hour. And yeah, they run stoplights, they run stop signs. But I believe that the smart thing to do is to try to get this traffic out at the intersection. So we appreciate your time tonight. I appreciate all your service to this community. And I thank you very much for considering the residents of Foxton and the residents of our new neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Kurthlink is the next speaker.
Hello, my name's Adam Kurthlink. Live in 136 St. Andrews Drive. I'm representing my parents today. They couldn't make it. I've lived in Foxton my entire life, basically. And I think introducing a neighborhood road that is not associated with Foxton into a quiet road on Champions Point is a terrible idea. As he stated before, people drive slowly on that road. There's a reason for that, because it's a quiet neighborhood. I think introducing undue traffic, undue commercial traffic into a private neighborhood is a disaster. There's a reason why we revisited this 3 times. It needs to be shelved. It needs to be stopped. If poor planning on the developer should not impact a neighborhood that has nothing to do with it. You have a built-in road with a stoplight on Old Stage. That's where it should go. that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
The next speaker, can you go up, SJ? And then Don Sokol after him will be the next one.
Good evening. I live on next door to my neighbor, 134 Champion Point. The most dangerous
And your name,
driveway.
please.
Pull the microphone
Most-
down just a little bit where we can hear you, sir.
The most dangerous
There you
driveway
go.
I have. My house sits on the bottom of the hill. When they come off the hill, you do not see any cars. When I pull off my driveway, I have to wait a few minutes to make sure there's no cars coming. I'm sorry I have an accent, but I can't help it. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I go around the circle in order to go up. When I come from driveway, I have to go around because I'm afraid there's cars coming. And if you want to come, any one of you, I'll be happy to invite you to come for 5 minutes, especially on Saturday and Sunday, when you see the bicycles, 5, 10, 15 bicycles, and they're coming from Kingston Pike and taking a shortcut. Those are professional bike people, not amateur. It's very, very dangerous. Again, I said, I would like to invite you. I want you to come and look at it. My house, I feel is the most dangerous. It's only 3 houses, and my house is only dangerous. On the right side, only 3 houses. I'm the most bottom of the hill, and where cars coming, I do not see any cars coming. I have to wait until about 2, 3, 4 minutes, then I turn right on the circle, then I turn left to the hill. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope you understood what I said.
What we
Thank you.
didn't get, sir, was your name and address.
What's your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everybody calls me SJ, initial SJ. The whole Knoxville calls me SJ. And I work with developer, all developers, I respect them. I have no objection about the housing building there. I have objection about the entrance.
Okay, AJ, what was your last name?
SJ.
Sahagian.
SJ.
Yes.
I'm from Germany, so I can speak German. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Please,
We
I'm
need, we
invited.
need your full name.
It's SJ Sahagian. SJ Sahagian. The
Thank you.
last name is Armenian name, but I grew up in Germany.
What's your street address, sir?
134 Champions Point.
34.
Thank you.
There's 3 houses. I'm the last house on the bottom of the hill.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
next
you very much. By the way, this is my first time talking in 54 years in public.
The next speaker is Don Sokol. Oh, okay, that's fine.
I'm Donna Sokol. I live at 12421 Houndeers Point, which is just up. After you get off Champions Point, you turn right and then left. And I take Champions Point all the time. And something that nobody's really discussed about that I remember is that there is a lot of walkers and bikers, bicycle riders in Foxden and on Champions Point because we don't have sidewalks. And so I can't tell you the number of times when I've come up Champions Point when I've had to swerve into the other lane to miss somebody walking their dog. And so I don't know how in the world I'm going to miss somebody pulling out from this new subdivision when I'm swerving to miss so I don't hit somebody that's walking their dog. And I've walked many times. I walk all over the subdivision, and that is the most narrow part of Foxden. you can't, even when you're walking, you can't see if anybody's driving until, the last minute. I could not believe when I read that there was talk of access road from this new subdivision into our subdivision. We have nothing to do with this subdivision. I'm all for them building their houses and doing whatever they do, but I really don't want their traffic into my subdivision, into where I walk, into where my family, drives. And it's just the most narrow place in Foxden, the hardest place to see if anybody's coming from any direction. A lot of times there's like waste management, garbage trucks sitting there getting the garbage. People pull their trailers over to mow yards and stuff there. So this is just a horrible idea. And I must also say my husband just wanted to remind you all that if something does happen to somebody, they will look at you people and ask, why did you vote for something that's such a terrible idea? So that's all.
Thank you.
And the last speaker that signed up is Barbara Irwin.
Hi, my name is Barbara Irwin, 316 St. Andrews Drive, and we've lived there for 36 years. So I have driven Champions Point, I do all the time, every day. I came up here thinking that no one was going to mention this, but Donna Sokol just did. We do have a very narrow road in Champions Point, and I was worried about as you come in from North Foxden onto Champions Point, the first thing you encounter is a big curve. That curve is very, very narrow. In fact, the curve between A and B side is 21 feet. A normal road would be 26 feet. So we're looking at a danger right there. I think that's why a lot of people go very slow. When I see another car coming at me on that curve, I just come to a dead stop because it's very tight there. So that's why I just wanted to mention that. That's just, I can't believe that we do this, especially since there's another way to do this. We can do this from the front. They can come out onto Kingston Pike at a light. So, makes more sense. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So, Mark, do we want to go with the variances now?
Well, I mean, you might want to discuss the access because I think the variances are related to the access.
Access, okay.
Yeah, I have a comment here. In listening to the comments from the residents, nearby residents, it seems like there's a misunderstanding of their Plan B to exit onto Kingston Pike. They each felt like that was a reasonable alternative. So Rodney, could you step back up and explain that slope again and where that slope is? Because we understood it because you explained it to us before.
Right.
But I have a feeling these folks didn't understand exactly what we were trying to say. And maybe you could point out, Mark, where that area is that is not feasible to do what they're asking us to do.
Sure. So the area that's in gray is what we're referring to here as the commercial part of that. And like any commercial portion, right where Mark's drawing his line, like any commercial portion, that would have to be ADA compliant. You've got, and I can't see the distances on there, but just going from memory, there's, from the front of the commercial to the back of the commercial, there's probably 170 feet, 180 feet in depth there. if you could start overcoming grade at Kingston Pike and start going uphill, right as you come in there, you could stand a chance to legally build that road to meet regulations. But you can't do that because it's commercial. It needs to stay flat. People need to be able to access it. It needs to be ADA compliant. So with that being said, you need to stay flat through that first 175 feet to the back of that gray area. Mark, if you'll show them where we're talking about on there, please, sir.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think what you're talking about is trying to stay relatively flat through here.
Correct.
Hang on.
So by the time you get back to that gray area, then you can think about overcoming that grade, which is about 26 feet, 24, 26 feet to get back to the road. And there's only about 130 feet there or so to do that in.
Really about right here.
There's not enough distance to overcome that grade to get to the part. Now, if that's something that we absolutely said had to be done, this would not look like anybody in the town of Farragut want it to look like. This would not be a project that we're thinking now, because we would have to mass grade that. The trees would have to go through the majority of that commercial buffer to be able to get the distance, to be able to get the room to make that grade change at something that's below 12%, which we're nowhere close to right now. So, does that help? Is that clear?
It's clear to me. I'm not sure if it's clear to the residents here.
If you have a question, you'll need to go to the microphone, please.
Thank you. My name is Russell Bird. I live at 12359 North Foxton Drive, immediately across the fairway from the proposed entrance. My only question is, if it has to be a flat grade to get into the subdivision, what is the grade of the property that is proposed to be commercial? So if that has to be ADA compliant, it seems like that would have to be built up to a grade as well to put the buildings there. So it doesn't make sense to me that they're going to put buildings on that property, but then they can't put a road on the same property. So that's my question, and I don't have any other comments. Just like the other folks, I'm not opposed to them building the homes there, but I am opposed to them coming on to Champions Point, just like the other 6 people that spoke. Thank you for your time.
I mean, the reality of the commercial part is it probably will remove most, if not all, the trees. I mean, when they develop that because of the topography, unfortunately. But there is a 35-foot buffer that's required on the backside of the commercial that they would, the only tree removal they can do in that area is just the crossing into, the residential portion if they did access from the traffic signal.
So grading doesn't happen in the buffer?
Well, they'd have to grade to get the crossing through there if they did access from the traffic signal. And that grading needed for that would affect the buffer. But, the rest of the area that's developed, that would be developed likely on the commercial part outside of the buffer there would probably be minimal tree preservation, unfortunately, with that because of the topography associated with the property.
If I could make a comment or two on that.
I think we're getting into road design here.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have a little bit more of understanding where the folks can understand what.
Probably so.
I mean, we're getting over everybody's head as they would recognize what the issue is. So we may have to have maybe this gentleman or Darrell or somebody to help us
I'll
out.
go ahead and I'll try a little bit here. I'm David Harbin. I'm the engineer and surveyor for this project here for Shad Properties. As designed right now, there's a pretty good elevation change between Champions Point and Kingston Pike. It's probably at 30 or 40 feet or something like that. So we're able, the two projects don't intertwine intertwined, so we can come in with the residential part. And Rodney's wants really big lots here, so we're coming in with the smaller road and the sidewalk. We're not going to clear the lots, we're going to let each individual homeowner, so we're coming in and just grading just enough to get the road in right now. So you'll still see a good swath of trees on both sides that we'll maintain. For the commercial side, if we had to come through there, it would be a big grading project. So you come in about level off of Kingston Pike, and then you start going up to make up that 30 feet of difference. Right now, I don't have to make up that difference between the two because, they're not connected to each other. But if I come in off of Kingston Pike, then I'm grading out the entire site of the residential area. So it's going to be a exit. There'd be too much dirt there. We'd have to find a place to truck it off site. It just becomes much more of an engineering challenge and a feat to do that. But letting us have two separate entrances right there allows us to have the residential come in and meet that grade, and then the commercial meet the grade along Kingston Pike. Let's remember, I'm not a traffic engineer, but Mr. Jacks is our traffic engineer. He analyzed this. I went out there and personally surveyed it myself. We got 205 feet of sight distance. In fact, after we go out there and grade, and we're able to grade a little bit more on our site to take a little bit of the hill down, we're going to get even more than that. I'd say another 10 or 15 feet at least. So it's, and what Mr. Jack says here for stopping sight distance, the minimum is 200 feet. We're not asking for a variance. We're not asking for something that's not safe. We've met the standard of the town of Farragut. So we're just asking today that you go ahead and approve this project for us. Thank you.
So, as the engineer states, it's not impossible for them to put a section through Old Stage. That's what I'm hearing, right? You guys can't do that.
With enough money, you can move a mountain, so.
So, there you go. It's a money problem.
It's not a money problem. We're not asking for a variance. We're not asking for any change. We're asking you to approve this subdivision. We've met the requirements other than the 3 variances that we've asked for, which is not what we're discussing. It's basically the entrance onto Champions Point. So we've met those requirements.
So, meeting the requirements, but you're negating all the people in the neighborhood that don't want that, right? So that doesn't matter, but money does.
No, sir.
Yes, that's exactly what you just said.
No, sir.
You
You're
can
putting
put-
that.
What did you say? You can put more money than anything? You can make anything happen? You can make it happen. You just don't want to. People in the neighborhood don't want it.
It's not a debate on that.
So
Yeah.
let's leave it at that.
That's not the issue here.
It is the issue.
It is not.
The people in the neighborhood have signed petitions. They do not want that road going through Champions Point. How is that not an issue?
No, the argument with the money is what is a personal issue,
We
not.
get the point, we get the
Okay,
point
fine.
Yeah.
about the
I get it,
neighborhood.
but I'm
okay?
saying it's not, it can be done. That's my point. It can be done. So you have people in the neighborhood that don't want it. It can be done the other way. It's just a money issue. Not part of this discussion, but fine, it can be done.
I think one of the things that we're looking at is the differential between the land and the grade and what has to be ADA compliant. He can't take off at Kingston Pike and start that grade. That commercial area has to be flat, and then there's a buffer in between there. There's a 35-foot buffer, I think.
I understand that, Mr. Williams. I understand that, but you're trying to force a neighborhood that no one's opposed to.
We're not trying to force anything.
No, we're
yet.
not trying to force
We're
anything.
listening
We're
right
discussing
now,
this
okay?
right now.
We haven't
Right.
voted or
I mean,
anything. I haven't made comments yet.
We're planning the neighborhood
So
to go
you're
through.
digging a hole deeper, okay?
But that's fine. I understand that, but you need to understand the citizens' argument that don't want
We
that.
understand it.
I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just
not?
saying
So it
perspective.
seems that way.
How am I arguing with you? I'm stating facts that the road can happen. It's just a money
We got
issue.
your point. You're chewing your bubble gum twice. We just need to go on with the rest, with more discussion, okay?
That's fine.
That's all. We got your point.
Yeah, and we have other people that we need to listen to.
Fine.
My name's Don Sokol, and I live at 12421 Houndiers Point in Fox Den. my wife is the one you talked earlier. If we have to come off, if they have to come off Kingston Pike and be level until they get to the property line for all of the new subdivision, wouldn't they, and it's 30 feet they have to change, what are they going to do there at the back of that? They're going to be 30 feet down when they come in level off Kingston Pike. Now, have y'all considered that?
Sure, that'll be a combination of walls on the commercial side, and also I don't have to come up with 30 feet of difference because I'm not connecting the two that way. Those two can be natural between it. We can have the natural grade working it, so there'd be a wall behind the commercial section, but also I don't have to have a road to connect the two.
But you still have to be up higher. You'd have to have a wall high enough so that you won't interfere with the...
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but we would not interfere with the buffer area or anything like that. When we design the commercial section, we'll grade that site and put the wall in and maintain the buffer areas as required.
We don't have a site plan for a commercial area right now, so it's...
Correct.
It's kind of a point that we have not got to in the request here, so...
Well, maybe we should have that before we make a decision.
My name's Paul Calkins. I reside at 12321 Singing Hills Point.
What was your last name, sir? I'm sorry, what was your last name?
Calkins, Calkins. I've heard discussion about, the grade and the 17%, and if I understood the discussion, the 17% is a straight line. There's many ways to achieve a grade. I mean, you go through subdivisions throughout Knox County, and roads curve. We do sidewalks for switchbacks and different things to meet grades. So 17% is a straight line grade, which, we go, streets are designed around straight line grades all the time. I think the first one was on the walking trail. I mean, we had grades, there was discussion on that where grades had to come down for ADA and have flat spots and resting areas. And so, I mean, there's many ways to achieve a grade without a straight line grade. If the grade seems to be the big issue with the developer, I think the safety coming in the other direction is a bigger issue. So I think there's a way to get the grade to come in off that traffic light. And the same thing when they do their development for the commercial, they've got to step and build their buildings accordingly. So there's more ways than just a straight line grade. So I'd like the commission or the board here to also keep that in consideration, that the developer may look at a different route other than a straight line grade. Thank you.
Thank you.
When they finish their comments, I've got some comments.
Hi, I'm Gary Harden, 133 St. Andrews Drive. Question, what is the grade difference from the front of Kingston Pike to the back of the commercial property right there? Untouched right now, as it is. I couldn't see it, it was kind of,
About 25 feet in my estimation.
So you're gonna have to take 25 feet out to make it flat and ADA compliant.
Well, 930, I take that back, no, 930.
It's about 20 feet, is that what it?
So about 25. It's 930 at Old Stage Hills.
Property lines.
But it runs around, see, how it kind of curves through it, because your commercial property is
It's 929.87
from
at
here
the
over.
edge of pavement at Kingston Pike.
Okay, let's, do you have those numbers?
I do. Katie Patterson, 4334 Paper Mill Drive. I'm also with the engineer for the project. The edge of pavement right if you were to draw a line from the old stage center line across to our property, is at 929.87. As you reach the back, if you leave room for your 35-foot buffer, you're at about 944 in elevation currently. The way we would grade it, it's kind of like a checks and balances. So on the right-hand side of the commercial, that would get graded out and the dirt would be pushed as you move left down the property, because there's quite a big difference of drop. So that's how we get the site level. We could just kind of take some from here, till we get it to a point that meets standards.
So stay right here. You probably got more answers. On the far left of your commercial property into, I think that's the green space in your neighborhood? Common area. What is the grade there? And is that a potential entrance off of Kingston Pike?
It's even worse.
So,
There's not going to be another curb cut. The one straight across from Old Stage is the only curb cut they have on Kingston Pike.
and just to follow up on that, there is a giant box culvert in that lower left corner, and that is a whole drainage way, which is why it's left untouched currently, because whole mess.
Thank you. Gary, don't run off. Hey, Gary, come back. Where were you? You had something in mind.
Yeah, I was thinking because Shad, they build extremely nice houses. I don't think anybody in Foxden opposes the neighborhood there. We do oppose, as everybody said, the entrance. And I'm just trying to think of an ideal spot for them to make an exclusive, nice entrance for an exclusive subdivision for themselves. And so I was thinking if you could go to the left on that page towards Everett Road right there, maybe make an entrance that would meet the grade requirements and go up into the cul-de-sac that as it's there now. That I'm just trying to think through options.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
On if you put your yellow line further to the left, right up against the edge of the property, and somewhere between, somewhere up through there, and that way you could keep the plat the same as it is. You would just use up your greenway as an entrance.
More of a danger.
That's a drainage area.
Well, you got that big curve.
That's a low area right there. Here's an access on the other side, right here. That's the next western access on Kingston Pike west of Old Stage.
So that's got sight distance. This coming out here doesn't have.
And that's the one that's the eastern access into Little Turkey Creek Commons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're looking at an alternative access, that would be your next option. But
The golf course. I mean, our interest in the Fox Inn is right across from another one. Another entrance on Kingston Pike. But I don't know what the rule is, so.
Okay.
Is that what that is?
Is that all the question?
Thank you.
Is that all the question people you have cards from? Okay.
I've got a couple of comments. One of the things that worries me when we look at subdivisions that pre-exist the town and where things have not been laid out for a stub or what have you, is that I moved, unless the subdivision itself is overwhelmingly in favor of something like this, I certainly listen to it. If they're not, then I'm really not encouraged to support, even though, the development and what have you can meet certain criteria, but I'm certainly moved by the fact on an existing subdivision where it's not really planned and integrated, that for a future development, We'll see this occasionally in the town, and I'm more moved by what the citizens of that subdivision want to do in accommodating this subdivision and its entrance. And I don't really think that we explored all the, I'm not here to optimize the design for the developer. I'm here to look at the overall safety and development for the community. And I think there's a way, there's nothing that says you have to go straight across the Middle Stage Hills. You can have that entrance and then snake around probably too and cut down. So I'm not sure we've explored all the design possibilities to access off Old Stage and that red light. So I can tell you right now, I'm not in favor of this.
I agree with you for the reasons you cited. The safety issue is something that I can't seem to overcome. The cars fall in that dip, you can't see them. This location is a safety issue that if it were further up, I wouldn't be as concerned, but it's the fact that the cars disappear and that there's an existing safety issue. I can't support adding to it. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
I mean, I think you better gauge the thoughts of the access, because that will drive everything else related to this action item. So we've heard from 2 planning commissioners on this, so.
Okay, so we're going to start with the variances.
No. If you've got approval from the rest of the planning.
I mean, I agree with Ed and Louise. I would like to see more options explored, not just right across from Old Stage, but I want to know that it's 17%. I want to know that it can't be done.
Okay. Yeah, because there's no point in taking action on the variances if you can't support the access in and of itself.
We cannot give a variance when there's no votes for the action.
That's right, yep.
So that leads us to,
Well, I mean, if there's any other planning commissioners that have comments on it, we've heard from 3 so far.
I think one of our main issues that we've always talked about is one of our main objectives that what a planning commission considers is the safety. And this seems to be the prime mover with this is the safety.
Can I ask a question then? What standard do I need to meet?
I'm sorry, what?
What standard do I need to meet?
I can't hear you.
What standard do I need to meet
What standard do you need to meet?
for the site distance? Yes, ma'am. I've met the standard as required by the town requirements, and staff has agreed as well that I've met that standard. So it looks like this body is wanting me to do something more. I guess I need some direction before you just not did. What standard must I meet?
You need to look at an entrance coming from that Old Stage Hill red light.
Well, we have. We've got it right here. My traffic engineer has stated.
No, you
that-
talked about a straight line right across, and I'm not.
What do you mean by a straight line?
I am not moved by the fact that you.
Okay, I understand. I don't want to be.
Okay.
I don't want to be. I can't do switchbacks. There's vertical alignments and stuff like that we can't do. That would just not. The property's not big enough for something like that. So I've met the stopping site distance at an intersection as required by the staff. So and if you're going to hold me to something greater, I just need to know what that is to see what my options are right there.
Well, we don't have to give you an entrance on the.
It's a public road, but it is right. You do have a right to approve it, but it is a public road, and we've presented a plan that it's not asking for a variance to the site distance, so we are asking for other variances. I just need to know what standard we need to meet, so when we come back with this and see if we can meet that standard for that site distance up there.
Okay, I think I'll go.
Mayor?
Mayor, go ahead.
The 70% grade's not acceptable, okay? So what I'm hearing from the rest of the, well, part of the group is to explore a different location, safety-wise. Now, what Gary Harden said, you can look at on down, possibly right before you get to the cul-de-sac. I think that lot number, what is the last lot number there, Mark? To the west. That fronts the commercial property.
6, I think.
Okay. Where did Gary go? I guess, okay. I think what he was referring to was somewhere at the end down here to where the road would come in, where the, actually the topo actually kind of levels out a little bit.
Correct.
Has she got the map? You're asking for direction. I'm trying to help you here, okay?
I think maybe down here.
Yeah.
Maybe trying to catch the end of that spur. You got a spur coming through here. That's the flattest part of the,
That's the kind of thinking,
to try to tie into
there are other alternatives than just coming straight across.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that there is. This is a T-Dot road, and we don't meet intersection spacing between other roads that are out there.
No, if you come off Old Stage, the red light, there's a
Okay.
way to get to that back piece of property and develop it with some integrated approach. It doesn't have to come a straight line, straight across with a maximum slope, okay?
If you get that
I've not
maximum
moved because
slope,
you
it's
haven't looked at
70.
it. You haven't looked at it and presented anything and telling me why you can't do that.
What we're looking at is if you go straight in, okay, take a left, go to the west.
Snake up.
With the vertical or the horizontal alignments as required by public roads, by local roads, we need to be tangent links and.
No, other way.
not that way.
No. Go toward the cul-de-sac. The first part of it you got right.
Okay.
Just further down.
Go to the property line.
Going this way,
Yep, now turn.
Now turn.
get on
Well, I don't know if that would be it, but something similar to that.
But looking at those slopes and seeing how.
Okay,
how
we'll
that-
look at that. If you give us another 30-day postponement, we'll look at that and see. I'm afraid the alignments for minimum horizontal curves and tangent links would get a bevy of variances, but we can take a look at that for you. If you give us another 30 days, we'll see what we can do to get the slope up through there.
Does that need a motion? Move for
Yes.
30 day?
Yes.
Move for 30 day.
Thank you all very much.
So let me be clear on that 30-day, because I don't think I was clear to them last time. I mean, I don't know if you're going to be able to get, the deadline for next month's meeting was this past Monday. And so I don't know if, you probably aren't going to be able to be on the September agenda. I mean, I just don't see how you could analyze that and get things resubmitted, because it's already an agenda item, but, we would need that to be resubmitted at the latest by, I was kind of looking here at the, let's see, 20, really, definitely no later than the 29th of August. I mean, the staff developer meeting would be on the 30th. But again, the deadline was the 15th of August for the 15th of September. We're giving you an extra time frame because you have a pending, application, and we've already looked at it a couple of times, so we're trying to be reasonable. But we also have to have time to evaluate the information at the staff level to make a professional recommendation, to the planning commission. So if you don't think you can meet that, then you would probably need to look at having information in by September 19th. That would be the deadline for the October 20th meeting. I mean, it's a kind of a substantial change, amount of information, it would seem to me, that you'd have to gather to look at different options coming in from Kingston Pike at the signal. And I'd rather have a good analysis, be able to look at it, you know, at the staff level and, you know, thoroughly analyze it and then have it ready for you all. And that may not be ready until October, frankly.
Mark, we're gonna go back and work on that and understand the position with deadlines and giving everybody time, so.
Yeah.
We could rush and try to get you something next week, but
You just want to try for the October meeting at
I
this
think in
point.
order to get you guys what you want to see and to really, really pick it apart, I think we'll probably go ahead and do that.
Okay. So if you do that, then again, the deadline for that would be September 19th, and the meeting would be October 20th, if you are ready for the October meeting, yeah.
Okay, so we
So we
need
might
to,
want to amend the motion. I think it was for 30 days.
Yeah, I
yes.
think so.
What do you want, what, motion for what?
Well, I think the motion would be, you know, at the earliest, it would be reviewed at the October Planning Commission meeting. But, I mean, it's really going to be dependent on what they can get
well, I was going to say, do we have to put in a,
to. You could just postpone it until adequate information is provided for the alternative access.
That's my
That would be
motion.
fine.
Okay, what's the deadline for the staff developer?
Well, the deadline is the same for the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So it's going to be what I mentioned there
Okay,
for the October meeting. I don't remember what that was already, but yeah, that would be the deadline. Then we'll review it and discuss it at the staff developer meeting for the October
Right.
Planning Commission. Yeah.
but we're not putting in a month.
So I just made a motion that we just were postponing for, till we have
Postpone it.
adequate information.
Related to an alternative access.
Do I have a second?
Alternative access point.
That motion?
Green.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay,
Take a break.
A few minutes to exit, okay?
yes. We're going to take a short break here. All the Farragut, oh, yeah. We're missing one that's essential.
Okay, well, he had to take a bathroom
He went to
break.
the restroom.
No, here he is. Okay, this is also number 8.
Number 6. Oh, yeah, that was number 8. Yeah, what you just handed me.
Okay, thank you. And we're fixing to go to 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to resume our meeting with the item number 6, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the Concord Road substation, a portion of parcel 03701, tax map 153, 3.66 acres at 1053 Concord Road, Zoned A, LCUB applicant.
As you may remember, last month, we had a project from LCUB where they were upgrading their overhead transmission line along a section of Turkey Creek Road. And the eastern terminus of that project would be a substation that they're planning to construct along Concord Road. They're actually would be leasing a portion of First Utility District's wastewater treatment facility site. They'll be on obviously the east end at Concord Road. They'll be leasing about 3.6 acres. Currently, it's a dense stand of intermediate-sized pine trees that were planted there, probably to buffer the wastewater treatment facility many years ago. This project would lead to the removal of probably about a little over 2.5 acres of that area. The area that's shaded is the wooded area that would be affected by this project. The area they're leasing to the south of that is not affected at this time, so those trees would remain. The main comments that the staff had on this utility project was really dealing with whether there was an opportunity to leave a buffer of those pine trees along Concord Road. Concord Road is a gateway road to the town, and so we were just exploring the option of if some of those trees, maybe a 25, 35-foot section, could be saved to help buffer the substation from Concord Road. The second item was basically dealing with the screen wall, the materials, the height, the appearance of that we'll get to in a minute. So the first item, again, dealing with the tree cover along Concord Road. Basically, when we asked that question with the applicant, staff developer, due to the grading and the fact that they'll be building a bioretention area basically on the west part of their lease space. Let me see if I've got that. No, I can highlight where that's going to be. They don't have a whole lot of real estate is basically the short answer to this, but there's a bioretention area that would be constructed in that location. Of course, you got the walking trail that was built as part of the TDOT project here. The grading would come over, into here. So what tree cover would remain, it would be a fair thin strip. And then due to the grading, it could create kind of an instability with some of the tree cover. So what they would like to do is create a landscape plan to replant a nice buffer along Concord Road and have kind of an integrated mixture of different, hopefully native plant material that would give it more interest and not be so, like it is now. It's a very homogeneous stand of pine trees. There's nothing wrong with the pine trees. It's just that would be what their request would be, and they would be submitting a landscape plan for the Visual Resources Review Board to approve as part of this project. So that was one of the discussion items that I would bring up. There may be others that you all have. The second one was the appearance of the screen wall that would be around the facility. In this location, there's really two very, probably more visible elevations. You got the Concord Road, or the east elevation, and then you've got the actual access into the property, the north elevation. And one thing that I used to live out near Westland Drive, LCUB did to me, a really nice job with the substation out there across from Moorfield Drive on Westland. That's what's depicted in the upper left image there, where they have a greater than 8-foot tall screen wall. They did some nice landscaping around the wall throughout every elevation, but it's basically a face brick wall. And to me, it has a very nice appearance, and it blends in well with the surrounding residential developments in that area. And that was something that the staff suggested, at least on the two more visible elevations, that they, kind of emulate what they did out at Westland. Now, the south elevation of the wastewater facility, or of the LCUB facility, would face the wastewater area. So it may not be quite as important back there. They could probably go with a, less substantial material. That would be like on this side of the wall. The wastewater facility is over here. Here's Concord Road. Their access would they don't have an access on the Concord Road, which is good. They basically worked out an access with the property owner to use the same access easement that First Utility District uses, and it's also a secondary access into the Avenir Memory Care Facility. That's right here. And then this is also the access that provides access to our fake pine tree cell tower down at the end of the...
That's so lovely.
So that's kind of an overview of the project. I think LCUB could go over, materials and color options, or different things that whatever they want to present to you all. But as we saw this, that was probably the two most significant discussion items related to this particular proposal. We already have a substation, as you all know, on McPhee Road, but I think this one would be a higher aesthetic, quality. I think with the screening in this location, probably something hopefully that's similar to what they did out at Westland Drive.
On the Planning Commission, have any questions for Mark before we get to the applicants?
My questions are for the applicants.
Okay.
Hey, good evening. I'm Ron Cronin with Lenore City Utilities Board. I live up off Westland, 938 Brim Drive. So I'm not really in the town, but I'm close. And I have Zach Wall is an engineer with Patterson and Dewar, who's done most of the design work, the site design work for the station. And, we're committed to doing what we need to make this facility blend in. The reason we're doing it is low growth. We're facing that in a lot of areas around our territory. And this is would be an ideal location to relieve some pressure we have on a few of the other stations in the area. So that's really the reason we're looking at doing this now. And again, the station at Westland Drive, the brick wall was really nice looking, and you can kind of see a profile of what you would see over the, we talked about this at one of our previous meetings, having an idea of what you would see over the brick. That top left picture kind of would depict the same thing you'd see here. There are going to be some still structures in the air that you're going to notice when it's first going up, and hopefully it's going to blend in pretty naturally to the area. And if you have any specific questions, Zach will be happy to answer those related to the site.
I just have a quick question about, Mark makes a mention of better aligning the eastern driveway access with the access into,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Avenir now or
Yeah,
what it's
Avenir.
called, but how much traffic, how much vehicles come in and are here at any?
You know, once the station is built and in service, it's going to be very infrequent. Once or twice a month for routine maintenance checks, and hopefully not much more than that.
Were they trying to avoid that pipe? Because I wondered the same thing, why they didn't just bring it down here, because that gets it a little further away from the access on the Concord Road, which would be, desired, but I didn't know if there was a reason why they offset it there. The only thing I could figure was trying to avoid that storm sewer.
Yeah, Mark, that's correct. We were trying to avoid relocating that storm sewer because the swale that feeds into that storm sewer was pretty significant running along Concord Road. So we'd have to pipe all that, underneath the driveway and then relocate that whole drainage system
I'm
if we're going to
thinking
line
with
the driveway.
the amount of traffic
Yeah,
that's coming in and
it's
out of that,
minimal.
it's not that important.
No impact from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they originally were maybe going to have to access from Concord Road, so this is a vast improvement. And again, they wouldn't have a whole lot of, obviously, traffic generation there either.
So can we remove subject to the number one subject?
Yeah, that was more of a question, as you
Okay.
see there. Is it possible to? And that was what we suspected, is
Okay.
that they were trying to avoid that storm sewer.
Okay. And the
Can
landscape strip abutting Concord Road, you stated that goes to VRRB? We
Yeah, the
don't-
landscape plan would go to the VRB. They'll have to have a landscaping for the bio retention, and that's kind of a technical kind of landscaping. It's a little different. And I have talked with the landscape architect that was maybe going to be doing the project, but I'm not sure yet at this point. But they'll have to have a landscape plan approved before they get a grading permit for the project, just like any other projects that come before you all.
Okay, so that's just a point of generally clarity. It needs to be left in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that's clear early on so that they understand the timing related implication of that.
Okay, I don't have anything else.
I have a question. Mark, in your introductory statement, you mentioned the fact it'd be nice to have some landscaping to replace some of the pine trees along the Concord Road.
Yeah.
Okay. Does LCUB have a problem with that, of some ornamental landscaping along there?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and to that question, I guess I was wondering, would it be actually more than what is at Westland Drive? Because honestly, in my opinion, the landscaping's pretty sparse.
It's pretty minimal there,
It's
yeah.
pretty sparse along Westland Avenue going from east to west. And then even on Emery Church Road, there's like a pine tree here and there. I've got to Google up on it. I drive by there just about every day. My daughter lives over there, a subdivision off that road. So I was just wondering, would that plan to have, as Mark suggested, more native species, but a little bit denser to kind of cover that up? I mean, I do agree the brick looks fine, but to me it's still an eyesore because it is, you have the substation there with the metal in the air above that sight line. That's
Right,
that's my take.
we'll do whatever we need to there as far as density. And I think we talked, there's a formula based on the number of trees that are being removed, what we have to put back, and what we can't fit there, we can possibly use in the transmission project, so.
Yeah, what we talked about with LCB was if they can't get all the replacement trees on this site, that they could use that as part of a utility line arboretum, maybe on Turkey Creek Road where they're upgrading their transmission line. We've already planted quite a few trees there that would be overhead utility line appropriate, and that would be something that we could partner with, hopefully with LCUB, and use it as an educational tool as well, So I think that would be, and the tree board that we have now, that might be a good project for them to work with. We have 2 tree board members here tonight, so So, well, 3 counting me. But,
Oh, thank you. That was my only question.
Anybody else have any questions for them?
I think what we would want on Concord Road, I think, is something that looks natural, and it's not like it's an artificial buffer, a row of evergreen trees. We don't want that. I think we'd rather see clusters of, native plants that make it kind of look natural. And I conveyed that to the landscape architect, and he was totally understood that. So hopefully that's what we'll end up, getting something submitted to the VRB that would be similar to that.
Do you guys have any problems with any of the other subject twos?
I think most of those items were addressed on the resubmittal, but I'm not sure when those plans were reviewed. But no, yeah, everything else is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
None.
So to be clear on the wall, you want something that's similar to Westland.
Right.
But do you want it on the 2 elevations we talked about and doing something different on the south elevation? On the west elevation. South elevation is where the trees will remain. So, at this point, they would that facility would be pretty well buffered by the pine trees.
That brings up a question to me is, do they need one side to be able to access the facility there? And
Heavy equipment.
how much room do you need there?
We'll have, on the north side, 2 20-foot wrought iron sliding gates, similar to that upper right-hand picture. And then on the south side, we'll have 1 man gate, an 8-foot, 4-foot swing gate that'll also be wrought iron.
So that'll give you plenty of room to access it in, okay.
And just to clarify, we're probably going to do the same wall all the way around, instead of just doing like a really nice wall on 2 or 3 sides. We'll just be consistent all the way around.
That sounds great.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was just looking at, other option for you on that 1 elevation, because it would face a wastewater treatment facility. So, but that's fine I think that's fine with us, yeah.
So if you had a swinging gate on the south elevation, though, what would be the access for that? You would need to clear the trees in there to create that access.
No, it'll just be a man gate for, it won't be a vehicular access gate.
Equipment. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Anybody in the audience?
We didn't have anyone sign up.
Nobody
Okay.
signed up, so.
A move to approve, subject to comments 2 through 6.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Item number 7, discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the Grove at Boyd Creek Amenities Package, Parcel 050, tax map 162, 3.94 acres, zoned R-1 OSMR, Homestead Land Holdings LLC, applicant.
Yeah, at last month's planning commission meeting, we approved a plat for the first phase of the Grove at Boyd Station. This is the former Schubert property that's at the intersection of partly McPhee, but mostly fronts on Boyd Station Road. Boyd Station Road is down here. Over here's the roundabout across from McPhee Park. So the first phase that was approved last month was basically this area. What they're requesting now, they would like to go ahead and move forward with getting construction underway with their amenities package. And that's actually located down here in this part of the overall project. At this point, there's no platted street down there. So basically, we would treat this as the one building permit that they would be allowed to have for the non-phase 1 part of the Grove project. Before we can issue a building permit, and I've talked with the fire marshal about this, they'll have to either have the binder down or some kind of approved compacted drivable surface for emergency response in case somebody was injured on the job site, that they could be able to get in there and get out safely. The other thing is that before we could issue any certificate of completion or certificate of occupancy, they would have to have the access road, which is Iron Plow Drive, that's this road here, would have to be completed and platted. I think,
Platted to
and
what?
platted
That roundabout?
to the, well, at least to the access into the property.
Okay.
Let me get over here if I can get this erased. And this shows you where the access is in relation to the roundabout. And it's right here. And here's that lower roundabout. So they would probably, I don't know, where they're at in terms of, I think Thomas had mentioned they were going to go ahead and pave and get this whole loop taken care of. I think he talked about that at the staff developer meeting, so that would take care of that. The actual plan before you is just a site plan, and it has a pool, has a couple of pavilions. The centralized mailbox facility is in this location. Got a couple of pavilions and the pool in this area, and of course the parking lot. It's pretty heavily landscaped. They have submitted a landscape plan. Looks, pretty substantial. So that's kind of an overview of what, they're proposing for this project. But as they get started on the houses, they want to go ahead and get this, underway so that it'll be ready when they actually have residents in there as a, selling point and amenity for the residents. So
they can get their mail.
And so they can get their mail, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll have more than one mail kiosk in here or not, but it's because it's obviously a big development. And there'll be an access onto Boyd Station, so they may have one there as well. This is just some of the images of it coming in. I'll get over here to the building. These are some of the building elevations. As I mentioned, there's 4 buildings associated with this. And these are the upper area, the north part. These are the pavilions. And then the pavilion out at the pool, and then the fancy mill kiosk at the very bottom. So they all are, symmetrical.
Mark,
and
do you know if the post office is the one who determines size, or is that basically up to the developer as far as?
They have to get all that approved through the post office. Yeah. So, yeah. But all the buildings are compatible with each other, nice high roof pitch. So we only had, I think, nine comments left, 10 comments left on the site plan, and really, all these should be something they could take care of. So we do recommend approval of the site plan, subject to addressing those 10 remaining comments.
Does anybody on the planning commission have any questions for Mark before we move on to the applicant? Applicant?
Hi, I'm Clayton Barron with Lowe's Design, the designer on this. I think Mark covered everything pretty well.
Can you give us an address?
Oh, I'm sorry, 9724 Kingston Pike. We don't see any issues with any of the staff's comments, so that should all be fine, but I'm here. Any questions that you have?
Yeah, I have one on the bicycles. Where's that going to be located?
Could you go back to the...
Would you like to tell me which?
Just the overall's fine.
Oh, the overall, okay, yeah.
So if you look at the bottom right of the building, between the pool and the building where there's that little jut out of pavement, we're gonna put it right there.
Okay.
Oh, was that, okay. Was that where it was that what was shown there? I didn't catch
We
it
had the
if it
pavement
was.
there, but we didn't call out a specific bike rack, so we can add
yeah,
that.
you're talking about here.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, I got you. It's a good
I was-
spot.
That's where I thought it would be because nothing else fits, so, okay, thanks.
What's the timetable for this construction of this?
Like Mark said, they don't have approved plans on this yet, so I'm not sure exactly when they'd actually get into, because obviously we can't get a building permit till the road's in, so I think they're going to start kind of building on this as they work down from that first phase. I don't have an exact timetable.
Can't sell houses till you get mailboxes, so.
Well, some people can.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
That's it.
I'm going to move to approve, subject to the 10 staff's points.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Item number 8, discussion on a request to amend the town's outdoor site lighting provisions to provide for outdoor ball fields and court lighting only where it is currently exists in Bob Leonard Park, McPhee Park, and the Knox County School property, Farragut Neighborhood Preservation Partnership applicant. This is for discussion only.
Yeah, we discussed this last month as another discussion item. The applicant reviewed their overall objectives, what they're wanting to accomplish with this requested text amendment. Really, it comes down to just protecting existing developments from incompatible, structures or developments that might, adversely affect existing subdivisions. One of those things is ball field lighting that they're trying to address. And, like we do with most requests that come before us, an applicant presents the concept, the idea of what they're trying to accomplish, and then we try to take that and put it in an ordinance language. And that's what we've tried to do here with this. What's on the screen is and this is just something we put together for you all to react to. There's nothing magic about this. Really, the bottom line with this amendment is that it clarifies existing practice. I mean, we've had ball field lights at Mayor Bob Leonard Park since 1989, and they've been at McPhee Park since 2009. So this would really just add clarification to that. It also would clarify in the intent section street lighting, because there are some regulations associated with street lighting in our subdivision regulations for residential street lights, and that's not currently acknowledged in our outdoor site lighting. Our outdoor site lighting ordinance is in our zoning ordinance. It's in Chapter 4. It basically is where most of the lighting related requirements are found. And so what we did in looking at the applicant's request was we went to the first section of this, the intent section, and that's a section that talks about, what type of developments may not apply, this section would not apply to. And so that's, to me, where it made sense to add this. And so what we're showing there in red is to basically, under those exclusion sections, we already have the single and two family and street lighting excluded. We clarify street lighting because there could be some that would not be excluded. And then lighting associated with public outdoor recreational field and court lighting at Bob Leonard Park, McPhee Park, and Knox County Schools. This basically acknowledges the fact that there are existing lights for field and court use at these locations. And then we felt like it would be important to actually define what is public outdoor recreational field and court lighting. so that it's very clear. So in the definition section of the zoning ordinance, we're proposing to add that definition, which basically says field and court lighting at Bob Leonard Park, McPhee Park, and Knox County Schools. And this is an important thing about this, is used to illuminate public playing surfaces that, and here's the key to this, is not, that would not be sufficiently illuminated for safety purposes, using pole-mounted lights as regulated in this ordinance. Pole-mounted lights generally are going to be capped at 28 feet. They're intended to be lights for parking lots. They have to be horizontal in orientation, so the light goes straight down. You can't do that on some of these ball fields because it wouldn't be safe. So what we're trying to do with the definition is describe why that's a little bit different, and that it's really only different because of the nature of what you're trying to accomplish with that light. Same way with street lights. Street lights are not, and generally they're not horizontal in orientation like we would require for pole-mounted lights in the rest of our ordinance, because they wouldn't perform the duty that they're designed to perform. You know, they wouldn't be able to illuminate the traveled way. Same way with ball fields and courts. They cannot be in general horizontal in orientation, and they sometimes have to be much taller than 28 or 40 feet, just in order to provide a safe playing surface. So that was the two things that we're proposing to change in the zoning ordinance, to address the concerns, I think, that were expressed by the applicant. But again, we're open to discussion or modifications to this. Any other ideas or thoughts, we'd be happy to take those and make some changes if we need to.
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mark before we move on?
My question, I know what we're trying to get to, but this, I think I'm getting lost in the definition part. Field and court lighting at Bob Leonard, used to illuminate public playing surfaces that, and we have this would not be sufficiently illuminated for safety purposes using pole-mounted lights. What does that mean? What is that in there for? And
Pole-mounted lights are the vertical lights that are regulated in the outdoor site lighting. That's the ones that are 28 feet.
Yeah.
So what that's clarifying is that these are lights that if you use those pole-mounted lights, they would not be sufficient. You wouldn't be able to sufficiently illuminate the playing surface, and it would be an unsafe condition.
okay.
That's what that's trying to, in a kind of a planner's or ordinance kind of language.
Okay.
And I know Jeannie and I talked about this, and it's hard to understand sometimes if you're not used to ordinance language, what we're trying to, but again, we're open to any clarifications or changes to this. It's just something we put together for you all to react to, and we can take it from there.
I kind of agree with Louise that the pole-mounted lights, well, the stadium lighting are pole-mounted lights, you know what I mean? So I think there's some
pole-mounted
confusion.
lights as regulated in this ordinance.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking
Okay,
about.
with that, I think the problem I'm struggling with is that I think we went to the negative of saying something would not be sufficiently illuminated for safety. Is there a way to positively say what it is we're trying to accomplish?
Well, yeah,
I
you
guess-
could just say that it's lights used to illuminate public playing surfaces, for safety related purposes or something like that. I don't know. I could figure that out if we need to change that. But yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I guess what I'm reading is the intent is in the definition, the very definition, we're limiting where these things can be.
Defining how it's being used in this context in this ordinance.
Okay,
Because otherwise, we don't need to define it.
yeah.
So if somebody goes to the outdoor site lighting section, and they look at the intent, and they see, well, what is a public outdoor recreational field and court? then they can go to the definitions and see that that's what it is, as it would be treated in our town's zoning ordinance.
Take out the negative part of the language and say, illuminate the public playing surfaces for safety purposes as regulated in this ordinance.
Used to eliminate, yeah,
Yeah.
That cleans it up.
Again, like I said, I'm open to any suggestions to make it more clear or whatever you need.
I had to scratch my head on that negative part myself and just
Sometimes, yeah.
figure it
Yeah.
out, trying to diagram the sentence.
What I'm really trying to do, and there's different ways to do it, is differentiate pole-mounted lights, which are regulated in our outdoor site lighting, versus field lights that you really couldn't use pole-mounted lights, to achieve what you're trying to do safely. So that's really what it's trying to accomplish there.
Okay.
I'll work on that I don't know if anybody else had any comments or questions, or if there's a different way to approach the request. I know the applicant wants to speak to that too, but again, I'm open to whatever.
Is this the end of it right here? There's nothing on the next page?
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
Of course, the intent is beginning before all of the outdoor site lighting options that we have. So we have pole-mounted lights, and we have wall-mounted lights,
String
decorative string
lights.
lights,
Yeah.
ground-mounted lights, bollard lights, under canopy, similar lights. So there's quite a few different ones.
See, a lot of those lights, depending on what you're doing, like buildings at parks, there's no reason why they can't comply with our outdoor site lighting. What I'm talking about are ball field and court lights that really can't comply with what we would otherwise require for a pole-mounted light.
Okay, if anyone else has any questions?
Are you ready for me? Okay. My name is Jeannie Brakolsky. I live on Crestview Road in the Bel Air neighborhood. And I'll do my best, I promise, that tonight not to whack the microphone again like I did last time. First of all, the intent of the Farragut Neighborhood Preservation Partnership is first and foremost to protect all Farragut families, homes, and neighborhoods from incompatible development, period. Our objective is to protect everyone, not just a subdivision here, not just a subdivision there. The town of Farragut was originally incorporated because of the intrusion of Knox County, and my verbiage, their willy-nilly approach to the way they would build things and do things, that there wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason, and at the time there also was very little citizen input allowed. And for me, this means a lot because I grew up with my parents knowing a lot of the people who helped found the town. And I went to school with Mayor Leonard's oldest son. He was a good friend of mine. Now, our little group, we have some of our members here tonight. Dawn and Jenny are from Glen Abbey. Mary Ellen is from Farragut Crossing. Lori is from Derby Chase, and my husband came to keep me in line. So, anyway, and the input that we've received from not only people in our neighborhoods, but people in other neighborhoods throughout a lot of Farragut. And there's a lot of concerns about what will happen if private entities are allowed to start putting in certain types of ball fields, certain types of courts. If a commercial development wants to come in and have a go-kart place at the front of the subdivision. If a golf course decides they want to put up lights for nighttime golf. There's so different types of businesses that could utilize outside acreage, land, however you want to phrase it, for their business at night that would be intrusive into residential areas. And the statement we came up with to present to you tonight is the Farragut Neighborhood Preservation Partnership is asking for outdoor recreational field and court lighting to be limited to public municipal properties such as McPhee Park and Bob Leonard Park, and to Knox County school properties in Farragut in order to protect all residential homes, neighborhood properties, and property lines from incompatible development. And some of the incompatible development has very negative side effects. A lot of these pole lights, 40, 60, 80 feet tall, light pollution. And I know there's been changes in technology. There will be more changes in technology. But the thing is, it doesn't matter. Light will spill over. There will be glare. And if you have lights, a bunch of string, a row of lights next to a residential area, it's the residential area's backyards, front yards, lights coming into their windows, lack of privacy. And also some of these poles, whoever's using these poles for whatever activities, do they want security cameras on them? And also to record activities, record games. Well, what if these cameras are cocked in such a way in order that they can catch the entire game, but it's also catching somebody doing their own thing in their own home or in their own property? I mean, I don't particularly want somebody I don't know recording me and what I'm doing, and I'm about as boring as you can get. But still, the point is, it's a privacy issue. And one of the side effects of light pollution is noise pollution. Because you have outdoor ball field and court lighting for one reason and one reason only. Night games, night matches. And when you do this, there's gonna be noise. And you're gonna have people cheering, you're gonna have people yelling. You're going to have bullhorns. You're going to have car doors slamming. You're going to have horns honking. And not everybody's on the same kind of schedule. You've got somebody who needs to get up early in the morning and go to work. They're trying to sleep. Can't fall asleep because of the noise. You've got someone who would just like to sit back and read a book. Can't relax. Too much noise. It's a domino effect. Safety, traffic issues. What happens when you've got these games going on at night, bringing more people into a neighborhood after dark? And you've got all these people milling around, and especially when there's kids involved, kids are going to be kids. Some of them are going to wander off. They're going to start poking around people's yards. They're going to start darting across the street, and here comes a car. Or it's the end of the game. Everybody's in a hurry to get home. And a child, doesn't listen to their parents or doesn't hear them, and they go running out between two cars, and there's also an accident. Traffic. There's an increase in traffic. More cars in and out of a neighborhood. And that also, of course, falls into privacy, falls into safety. Property values. For most people, our homes are our biggest investment. For many, it's our only investment. These type of lights in, adjacent to, or near a residential neighborhood, homes, properties, will negatively affect property values. Now, I'm not just talking million-dollar homes like some of the subdivisions they're getting ready to go in. I'm talking middle-class homes. I'm talking older subdivisions. I'm talking newer It does not matter the size of the home or the income of the person and persons living there. If they want to sell their house and somebody comes driving into the neighborhood and they see 10, 12, these tall lights, and they're like, I don't know if I want to live here or not. Yeah, that is a serious consideration. But most important of all is the quality of life. Our homes are where we spend our time with our family and friends. They're where we feel safe and warm. Our homes are where we find peace and tranquility. Pure and simple, our homes are where our heart is. We want to protect every single resident in the town of Farragut, in their homes, in their neighborhoods. Let's not commercialize or give anyone the opportunity to commercialize and negatively impact our homes and our neighborhoods in any way, form, or fashion. Let's remember what our founding members of the community started, and let's honor that.
Ms. Prokowski, I don't think that we have a debate about what your guys' goal is here. This is just a matter of how do we get the language clear enough so that we're all comfortable with what that looks like. And I think that's where I get the sense, and I haven't heard many people chime in, but I get the sense that there's agreement on this planning commission that we'd like to proceed forward. We're just trying to get the language
Well, I say
clear.
language that a lot of the language that, I say, Mark has done a fantastic job getting things organized and picking up ideas and
But I would say ordinance language sometimes is not always as clear as, crystal clear as we want it to be, but it's language that is written the way it is for legal reasons.
Right.
That,
well, that's why we brought up limited to municipal, public, and Knox County
Yes.
schools.
Understood.
And then the reason being, protecting incompatible development in residential areas.
Understood.
Yeah. We hope that is clear and concise, and we hope that is something that legally would pass muster.
Well, we're just trying to craft this language so that we feel comfortable that it's clear in the intent of it. So I understand what, yeah.
And Mr. Hale will have to also bless it, so.
Well, Laura, you're a member of the group with the application.
You can speak as an applicant.
Yeah.
Applicants
I
don't
was
need to
about to
fill
say,
out
does
the
anybody
card.
of our group? Oh, Mary Ellen does, she's right behind me.
I do
Okay,
have a couple
thank you.
of people that have signed up to speak to this whenever you're
Okay.
ready.
And we're
Okay.
happy to address any questions.
Okay, thank you. Mark, let me ask a question while we're getting transition here. Do we need to include Knox County schools in there since we have no authority as such over what they do or don't do on their property?
I don't think it does any harm. I mean, it just adds clarity to an existing condition. I mean,
Okay. We just need for it to be understood that we,
we have them come before us. We did with the lacrosse
Yeah.
field lighting, and we asked them to try to do what they could to minimize the impacts. So, it's technically they would be probably exempt from that type of requirement, but
I just don't want it to come down someday
doesn't do
to-
any harm to have that in there, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because it adds more clarity to where these type lights are now. and have been for, in some cases, many, many years.
We know there's going to be another school built, and we have not seen any plans whatsoever. So,
Yeah, we don't know.
Do what they want.
And just a point as an average citizen, anything that keeps it short and simple and easy for the average citizen to, to read and understand, 100% for.
Well, I just don't want us to get to the point where people think we can do something about the,
What's going on in Knox County schools?
right,
yeah.
right.
That language actually adds more clarity to what your concern is,
Okay.
because it says that they're exempt.
okay, next
Mary
week.
Ellen wanted to
Yeah.
speak?
Yes.
And I do have a couple of, I have one other speaker. Mary Ellen Brannon? Okay, yeah.
Part of the group.
Oh, you're part of the group? Okay. Well, you didn't need to fill out the blue card then. That's all right.
Okay,
It's fine.
better safe than sorry. Okay, I'm Mary Ellen Brannon. I live at 212 Battery Hill Circle, which is in Farragut Crossing. Just a few brief comments tonight, actually. Obviously, we're all passionate about Farragut and its future. We want to have attractive neighborhoods, including compatible amenities in appropriate locations. An amendment to the town's outdoor site lighting provisions to specifically restrict ball field and court lighting to McPhee and Bob Leonard parks is a step to proactively help all of our neighborhoods, help protect all of our neighborhoods from future intrusive and incompatible ball field and court lighting. Rather than having to continually fight against future incompatible lighting proposals on a one-at-a-time basis, our group decided to take the initiative to address our concerns in a positive, forward-looking manner, which we believe would benefit all Farragut residents and neighborhoods. Really, what we'd like to do is leave our Farragut residents in peace without the specter of intrusive and incompatible recreational field lighting constantly on our minds. We need to put it to rest once and for all. This could go on forever if we don't really define this and limit ball field and court lighting. We need to put a stop to our Farragut neighborhoods and residents' deaths by 1,000 cuts. So really what we're trying to do is to defend our neighborhoods, define this lighting on ball field and court lighting, and get it on the record that we're going to protect our neighborhoods. So thank you so much. I'm glad to answer any questions. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lori Lyle. I'm from Derby Chase, 319 Shadowfax Road. And I guess my question is more on the language itself. To me, the new language excludes the parks and the Knox County schools from the 28-foot limitation, but it doesn't address, in my opinion, our amendment proposal that like private entities can't have recreational field lights. I don't know if I'm missing something with that, but to me, that doesn't say that.
Well, the following requirements, it says shall apply to all developments and/or facilities, and then it has these exclusions. So basically, everything that's in the remainder of that ordinance is what's allowed, and then what requirements you have to follow for what's provided for. And it doesn't provide for the ball field and court lighting in anywhere else in the remainder of that.
So you're looking for exclusionary, you
Well,
want specific exclusionary language
like-
in there?
Yeah, like the requirements of the 28-foot poles, that's not even what we were asking for. We were just asking for like no ball field or field lighting, I guess, by the neighborhoods. So this, to me, this I don't have a problem with this language because what's already been done, it justifies that, but I don't think it says you can't put lights beside our neighborhoods.
Well, I mean, it does in an ordinance manner in terms of how it would be treated myself and legally, but you know, if we need to add some kind of clarification to make that even more clear, we can certainly do that. Again, this was put together just to react to. There's nothing, I'm not tied to this language. I think it accomplishes what you all really requested. It narrows down where this kind of public outdoor recreational field and court lighting can exist. And it really is where, at this point, other than maybe the new Knox County School, which we ultimately couldn't regulate anyway, where it currently exists at our two parks that have lighting. Our other two parks are dark parks, like Anchor Park and Founders Park. So they're not, I mean, they would have to comply with the ordinance that we have here for outdoor site lighting.
And like in the definition part as well, it says, it even defines the field and court lighting at those parks and Knox County schools. It doesn't say anyone else. I guess that's my question. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't say that other places can't have lights. It says these places can have them.
She's looking for specific exclusionary language, I think.
Like only at Bob
Yeah.
Winters. Is that what you
Right,
something like
yes.
So
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
that's
we can probably
something.
look at that, yeah.
that? As the mayor said, Tom Hale, town attorney, will have to look at
Yeah,
the
he has to
language,
bless
too.
it, so we're,
That might just be specifically what you need to do.
Lori is reinforcing, basically, our tenant is public municipal Knox County schools only.
I understand.
Okay, yeah.
We don't want, commercial or private entities at fronts of subdivision, in subdivisions, sides of subdivisions, being able to put the intrusive lighting systems in that would affect our families and our friends and our neighbors.
I think we've got enough
Yeah, I
to
think
go
we
on.
can tweak that and see make it a little bit more clear and more of a.
If you need us to meet with you to help with that, we're available.
All right.
So you've had people signed up for this?
I do have one speaker. If you're ready, Chairman.
you ready?
Me.
You're ready for the other?
Thank you.
I have David White. He's signed up to speak.
While he's doing that, Mark, let me ask this question. Can we exclude, can we have a say on single-family and other residential private property?
Thank you.
Can we do anything about private property? Is that?
Well, the last sentence in the existing ordinance, where it covers even the non-exempt, says, in no case, however, shall any light shine or glare to create a traffic safety hazard on any adjacent properties, rights of ways, access easements, or driveways. So if somebody at a single-family residence had let's say a bright spotlight that was creating a traffic safety issue, that would be, we can address that. That would be in violation of this ordinance.
We've had that before.
So, yes.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes you'll have these floodlights out near mailboxes that are a traffic safety issue, and that would not be exempt. That would be
So
something we
even
could
if
cover.
my across-the-street neighbor has a spotlight on the end of his house that shines in my bedroom, I can or can't do anything about that?
Well,
Saves me on electricity at night, but,
yeah, I don't think that would be covered with the language that we have right now.
okay,
That's mainly dealing with traffic safety.
okay.
You ready?
Ready?
Everything they're looking for, everything you're looking for is in the original ordinance.
Please identify yourself and your
David
address.
White, 314 Vista Trail.
Thank you.
I don't understand why you want to change. It's not restricting anything. What you're doing now is allowing. Everything in the original ordinance is restricted. That's why I gave you a copy of it in case y'all haven't read it. The following requirements shall apply to all street lighting, all developments and/or facilities, excluding single-family and two-family dwellings, site lighting. In no case shall any light, shine, or glare create traffic safety hazard, adjacent properties, right-of-ways, access easements, or driveways. Pole lights, athletic field pole lights. Unless specified elsewhere in this ordinance, light poles, including all supporting base, shall not exceed 28 feet in height, and the height shall be measured from the ground to the top of the pole. Pole light modification. For existing developments that are expanding, if the existing light poles are taller than 28 feet and the new light poles are added as part of the expansion to the project, the Planning Commission may approve a light pole taller than 28 feet inasmuch as the existing light pole, if any, can be shown to be taller. It then will not create a negative effect. In no case shall light poles exceed the height of the existing poles or 40 feet in height, whichever is less. It's plain as day, nobody is allowed to have them. Not even us, not even the town of Farragut. We're restricted. As a matter of fact, the lights in McPhee and the lights in Mayor Leonard are illegal. They were put in contrast to the code. Right there it is in writing. They did it anyway, ignoring the code. So what do you do now? You come in here and you try to change the ordinance to make it look like you haven't violated anything. Oh, it's okay to put them in McPhee. It's okay to put them in Mayor Leonard. Oh, wait a minute, they're already there. They're already there. How'd they get there? They got there illegally. Not supposed to be there. That's a case for another day. But right now, you change this. You want to protect every neighborhood, every subdivision, every homeowner, every loan owner from anybody putting up 60, 70, 80-foot lights adjacent to their property. Use the existing ordinance. It's all right there. You can't do it. A commercial entity can't do it. A homeowner can't do it. Nobody can do it. So all I'm saying is look at the ordinance, read it, try to figure out why somebody wants to say we're going to allow McPhee and Mayor Leonard to violate this ordinance. Why? Because they already have. If anybody thinks you can change this ordinance with a variance and overshadow that violation of the code, you're wrong. The code actually says a violation of the code is timeless. You cannot write an ordinance, you cannot write a variance to cover a code violation. It's there forever. So remember that.
Time's up on that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Who's calling time?
The 5 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
sorry.
I didn't hear that weird little buzzer.
Yeah, I was trying to head that off before it went off again.
I guess we can't ever change an ordinance.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all of our questions or comments?
That was just a discussion item unless anybody
Discussion,
else has any.
Okay. Hey.
shouldn't have voted for him.
I guess one thing I want to say is that this was proposed by us, not by them, to try to cover their tracks. The only reason we put those in there is because they are already there. So that's why we put that in there. And as far as the 28-foot, that does not cover what we're asking for, because that is different from what's the ordinance right now. We are asking for no lights. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this was for discussion purposes only. We'll move on. If that's all, we'll move on to item number 9.
Excuse me, when would you be able?
We can't hear you.
Sorry, I forget about that.
Do you think you'll have language ready for next meeting for public hearing?
Recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think,
Pretty straightforward.
yeah,
That's
think
what I was
Tom to
gonna
look at
ask.
it, get Tom to.
hopefully,
I don't think we need to not speak for Mr. Hale's schedule, okay?
Yeah. We're attempting to
We'll
have
do
it
our
on
best.
next month.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you to Mark for all his help getting all the verbiage together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 9, discussion on the future land use map amendment, considerations associated with the Kingston Pike, Smith Road, Boring Road study area. And again, this is for discussion purposes only.
yeah, this is, again, just discussion, no action be taken. This is dealing with our latest study or priority area. It's kind of in the central part of town. Kingston Pike, Smith Road, Boring Road study area is what it was called, and you can see it there on the screen outlined. The black line outlines the study area. Like other priority areas that we've looked at in the past few years, we engaged the community, that's living in this area or nearby, to try to assess whether the vision that was mapped in 2012, when we actually mapped our vision as part of our comprehensive land use plan, is current and up to date, or if there's some things that needs to be revisited, just like we did at McPhee and Watt Road and Outlet Drive. We made modifications to the map in all those locations because there was things that were no longer current or conditions had changed. And that is, what we're looking at with this particular area. We had 3 public workshops that were all very well attended, and then we had a summary of the feedback that we received with our steering committee, which is also a public meeting. That was on May 23rd. This study area is a little bit different than the other 2. It's not quite as homogeneous as some of our other areas where we had public meetings. There's a lot of diversity in this area. You go from a very commercialized section along Kingston Pike to a very kind of rural agricultural part of town as you kind of feather your way out from Kingston Pike along parts of Boring Road and Boring Lane. So just a little background with the map that there is on the screen there. That was what was, most of that's what was mapped in 2012. And at the time, we were looking at this area as there's some existing residential communities there. The Ingalls at the time was in very poor condition, and the expectation was that that would probably be demolished. And this may be a good location for a mixed-use neighborhood. So a lot of the area along Kingston Pike, even over to where NHC is, was mapped in the pink, which is mixed-use neighborhood. Let me highlight that just to. I might need to use a different color here. There's a lot of colors going on. So that's kind of this purple area, the mixed-use neighborhood. And, that's kind of a pedestrian-oriented type of development, kind of a scaled-down mixed-use town center. So to try to map out land uses that would provide for potential residential densities that could support the mixed-use neighborhood. Some of the peripheral areas were mapped as medium-density residential, and that's what's in the brown, these areas. And so it's getting a little cluttered now, but so the point is that since that original mapping, similar to, again, other parts of town that have changed, the Ingalls building was actually renovated and not demolished. So the idea of the mixed-use town center in that general location kind of went away, or mixed-use neighborhood. And so another thing that happened was some of our higher density residential, we got a development that was built north of the interstate. We have one that's under construction at South Watt Road, and then there's one over that's part of our Town Center at Biddle Farms project that has a high-density multifamily component to it. And then we've had some attached single-family developments that have gone on in different parts of the town, like Ivy Farms townhomes, townhomes that will be part of the Town Center at Biddle Farms project. So all those things collectively help to address the need for additional housing choice, which is another one of our strategies in our plan that we were trying to accomplish. So it kind of becomes apparent, in looking at the map, that we need to acknowledge the changing conditions, the changing circumstances, maybe acknowledge where there are existing developments but aren't mapped in accordance with how they actually are in the field. And so what we put together, again, this is just for, again, discussion purposes only, was some areas where there could be some considerations for amendments to the future land use map. And what I was going to do is go through these. I tried to label them and then have that tied back to the text to describe what we're trying to do here. But this is kind of a proposed future land use map. One thing I wanted to be clear about, because I'm going to be talking about zoning later a little bit, the difference between a future land use map and a zoning map. Future land use map outside of the town center is it doesn't have embedded in it requirements. It's just a vision in a moment of time for what a community may do in a certain location. There's nothing that says it has to do that. There's no requirements tied to it. Whereas zoning is what you can and can't do with your property, how far buildings have to be set back from property lines, how much coverage you can have, all kinds of things that are regulatory in nature that you have to meet. So there's a big difference between the two. The one is just kind of a vision map. The other is requirements, basically. So when I go back and forth talking about those two, try to keep that in mind, because some of these considerations involve just making the map more consistent with the existing zoning or how the land's being used. And that would go to the first area there, Area A, and that's where the NHC is. Let me just highlight that if you can't point it out there. That's right here. And what may be a consideration there is that's currently mapped as mixed-use neighborhood and medium-density residential. Neither of those land uses are consistent with NHC. NHC is not going anywhere. So what we would recommend there is you change that to civic institutional, because that's a land use that's consistent with how the property is actually being used. The next area, and if y'all have any questions when I go through these, just let me know. I do have some people that have signed up to speak. The next area is B, and that's an area that is west of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, just to the south of part of Fox Den. It's currently zoned R4, which is attached single family. That allows a density of up to 6 units per acre. And on the future land use map, it's currently shown as medium-density residential, which is 6 to 8 units per acre. So what we would look at there is maybe reclassifying that to low-density residential, which is 3 to 6 units per acre, to be consistent with how the property is zoned. The next one is C, and that's here. And that is the area that is between Enterprise and Weigels and to the north of those developments. That one, basically what we would do there, again, similar to NHC, is just acknowledge how those properties that are developed are actually being used. So they would be changed to commercial land use. And then the area to the north may be an option for mixed-use neighborhood as kind of a transitional land use between commercial and lower density residential like you see at Fox Den. North of that. It'd be something similar to maybe the development that they're looking at doing out on Watt Road, you know, that has the townhomes and small footprint commercial to maybe transition in that area. So that's what we're looking at on C. And we can come back to these and talk about them individually. Some of them are more straightforward than others probably. D is the next area, and probably need to go to a different color. Let's do, I don't know, maybe blue. I already got too many colors on this. But D is where the old Ingalls and new Ingalls are mostly. And a lot of that's mixed-use neighborhood, and I talked about earlier that really is probably not going to come to fruition as it was maybe expected to when this was originally mapped. So one thing to consider here is just, again, changing the land use to be consistent with how the property is being used and its zoning, which would be the commercial land use for those rather than mixed-use neighborhood. The next area is E, and that's basically a buffer that is north of the Ingalls and then also along Boring Road. And again, consistent with how the property is actually currently zoned. Those areas are currently zone buffer. The open space land use would be more consistent with the zoning. They're currently mapped as part of a larger medium density residential land use. So that again would bring the future land use map into compliance, I guess, with how those little properties are zoned. This buffer strip here is about 100 feet wide to the north, and I think the other one is 25 feet along Boring Road. Next area is F. Let's see here. Okay, F is the area north of the Ingalls, and that area you start working your way into a little bit more of a rural setting, and what you have there currently, that area is medium density residential, and so what we would consider there is very low density residential, which is really not very low density residential. That's how it's classified in our plan, but it's actually 2 to 4 units per acre. The property is actually zoned R1, and so the density allowed by that land use would actually be about double how the property is currently zoned. But that would be more consistent with the existing development to the north, Baldwin Park and Waverly Court, to the west of that. And as you know, in our plan, there's a policy to basically have densities of new development to be compatible with existing adjacent density. So again, I think that consideration would address those elements of our plan. The next one is G, and this is between Baldwin Park and Waverly Court. And this is another area that we would consider probably be more appropriate as very low density residential. Waverly Court's an R4 development, that's up to 6 units per acre. Baldwin Park is R3. You're looking at less than 3 generally. So 2 to 4 is what's allowed under very low density residential. Again, it's almost double the density of how the property is currently zoned. It's mostly zoned R1. There's a small section on the south end of that. It's R2, but the very low density residential would be, a notable increase in density, and it would be a land use that's frankly more compatible with adjacent densities. H is the next area, and that's north of Boring Road. And the consideration there is to look at that area, start looking at some of these areas along Boring Road and Boring Lane as maybe rural residential land uses, and that's greater than 1 acre. It's, again, as you get further north and east on Boring Road, it does start to get a much more rural kind of agricultural character to it. So the rural residential land use designation would be more compatible with the existing plan of development that's out there now. We know we've got a piece of property that's roughly 15 acres that an individual has bought. Of course, this could all change, but their intent is to have a farm. And so the land use designation to rural residential may be more compatible with how the property is likely to be used and is being used currently. It's currently shown on the future land use map as low density residential, which would actually be 3 to 6 units per acre. And that's, a pretty substantial density in that location probably. I is another area that's kind of in that more rural part of this study area. It's kind of at the intersection of Boring Lane and Boring Road. As you make that turn, some really large oak trees and things through there. Property's currently zoned R1. And one thing to consider there as you kind of work your way into these more rural areas is to look at that as potentially a rural residential part of the study area. And that would be really consistent with a lot of the feedback, the predominant feedback that we receive from the community as you start getting into areas I and J. The agricultural land use was a very popular use under the visual preference survey in those areas. So rural residential may be a land use that would be more fitting for that. And the same would apply to Area J, and that's at the easternmost part of the study area. I know where the little green garden nursery is. And that again might be a candidate for rural residential greater than 1 acre. Again, there's nothing that ties any of the changes to the future land use map to a requirement. It's just a question of whether the map needs to be brought into more of an alignment with how the land is being used, things that have changed since 2012 and all these other considerations, community input. That's all that really this is about. They still would have to, if somebody wanted to do something with the property as far as actually develop it, they would have to, if they needed to do something different than how it's zoned, what's allowed on the property, they'd have to try to rezone it. And so that was something with that area, is looking at rural residential. I think that area also is currently specified as low density residential, which is 3 to 6 units per acre. And that's, really more in line with attached single family type of development. So that's kind of an overview of, what we're proposing, again, based on the feedback, the predominant feedback that we received at these 3 workshops. But again, these are just considerations, and I wanted to get everyone's input on, whether we're on track here. If there's specific areas you want to talk about further, we're certainly open to that. Now, I do have some people that have signed up to speak to this whenever you're ready.
You want to do that first?
Yes.
Okay, let's go with that.
We've got Doug Horn. 5 minutes.
Thank you. Doug Horn, 12103 South Fox Den. My daughter Susan's here. She lives in Fox Den too. And we have an attorney here, Ben Mullins, who's a Farragut resident with Franz, McConnell, and Seymour, our attorney. We totally disagree with the change of the land use plan. Let me remind everyone that in December of 12, our property, we have 50 acres there, 40 acres and 10 more. It was classified 6 to 12 units per acre, medium density. In 2018, it was arbitrarily changed to 6 to 8 units per acre. That's what it is now, 6 to 8 units per acre land use plan. That's what we have to keep. What you all know is very, very knowledgeable commissioners know, the land use plan has a lot to do with the value of the property. You can't rezone property unless it really adheres to the land use plan normally. Not the commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will not do it. We had an example of that on Eddie Ford's property. The land use plan was changed. We came in with a development plan on Eddie's property, and it was killed because the land use plan had changed. The text amendment on the land use plan dictated you could only have multifamily in one mixed use between South Campbell Station, Concord Road, and Kingston Pike, which destroyed Eddie Ford's value of his property. We cannot tolerate, my daughter's here, we have 2 grandchildren, my wife and I. I'm an old Farragut graduate like David White. I graduated 1 year before David did, and we have been here for many, many years. We've owned this property for 42 years, and we will have to take legal action if you change the land use plan, because we know, and you know, that when you change the land use plan, it dictates what you do on zoning. That's example, prima evidence, Eddie Ford's property. So we've even offered a great builder, Mike Stevens, to develop 6 to 8 units per acre on this property. We also have even offered, and the mayor knows this, we've even offered to widen Boring Road at our expense. The town of Farragut doesn't want to widen Boring Road at your expense. We would widen Boring Road. That's a lot of money. It'd probably be $1,500,000 to widen Boring Road and curb and gutter it. But we have to keep the land use plan. The people that appeared at these meetings, and we were there too. Susan was there, I was there, some of our other people were there. And you cannot say that the whole community was involved on this specific property. Surely there were people right around it. I remember when Baldwin Park was built, we owned the property beside it. We didn't want Baldwin Park there. We'd rather kept it agriculture, kept Mr. Stewksbury's cattle on it. But it changed, growth happened, and it changed. We built Waverly Court. We built that ourselves, 4 units per acre, a long time ago, R4. This property, when you change the land use plan, it kills your value. It kills your monetary value, which hurts your family. So we can't agree that the land use plan be changed. You can't have a few people make comments at these workshops and then all of a sudden everybody changes the land use plan, which dictates what you can zone it. So unfortunately, I'm an old guy here in Farragut. We've been here for many years, but we will have to file legal action against the town and people in the town if you change the land use plan. So let's don't kid ourselves. Land use plan has a lot to do with what the Board of Mayor and Aldermen will zone it. So that's, and we've offered again to widen Boring Road at our expense. We thought that was a great thing to offer the town, so you need to consider that. So we, with our attorney here, we have to protect our interests. You cut this land use plan down in half like you're talking tentatively about, it cuts our value down a few $1 million on this property. So we just can't stand it.
The next speaker we have is John Holtzrager.
Good evening. I'll be brief. John Holstrager, 345 Bernie Circle, Baldwin Park. Mark, thanks for the historical overview of what's been happening with this area. I've only been involved with it since about 2015, and it's helpful to know the history there. The 3 workshops that we had were really well attended. We had a number of folks from this corridor attend. Mark, you probably know how many that was. I don't. But our point was we'd like to keep the zoning as it is. I'm not going to say that I'm an expert about what legal value the land use plan has versus the current zoning, but the feedback that we gave was that we'd like the R1 and R2 zonings to stay as they are. Mark said it really well when he's talked about the rural character of the area and the consistency with the use of the land as it is today. I guess I'd like to invite some dialogue from this body about what you interpreted from the input you heard from the residents of that area. And of course, Mark, any comments for or against what I've just said?
Do we have anyone else to speak?
We don't have anyone else that's signed up to speak, no.
Does anybody else in the audience have any questions or comments?
Paul Johnson, 344 Bernie Circle. When we bought our house in Baldwin Park, we were unaware that the adjacent land was medium density potential. And this whole area is rural in nature. And, he's owned this land for, as he said, over 40 years. He hasn't done a thing with it. And we established our home there, and we are happy there, and we don't want a huge, dense development right next to our subdivision. I think that basically, and there was a large group of people at those 3 hearings. I was to 2 of the 3 hearings because 2 of them were identical, and everyone I know of that are in that part of town wants it to be lower density, not a medium density residential. Thank you.
Do you have any input on these considerations or any areas you want to talk about further?
Anybody on the planning commission?
I'll give you some background. Can I give you guys some background? Because I think that there's some confusion here. This plan was adopted in December of 2012. I think you guys and Noah were the only members that are on the current planning commission that were involved with that. So I don't need to review what you guys.
The original land use plan.
Yes. We have the right to plan based on Tennessee Code annotated section 13-4-201, which states in part, it is the function and duty of the commission to make and adopt an official general plan for the physical development of the municipality, and it goes through and explains some of the many ways that, many of the considerations we need. And at the end, it says the commission may, from time to time, amend the plan. You go to the plan itself, and we have policy statements in our plan. And policy number 2 states, the club should be updated as often as necessary to remain current. Even if no major changes occur, the plan should undergo a major review and update if appropriate at least once every 5 years. In 2017, the later part of 2017, we assembled a steering committee to do just that. about 5 years, we met and charted a path forward to review and update the plan if necessary, and decided to go with the review of the various corridors. So we picked Watt Road, McPhee Road, Snyder Road Outlet Drive. This Kingston Pike sub-area was on that list. Concord Road.
Concord, yeah.
And the mixed-use town center were all kind of put in there.
Say McPhee.
Yes, I said McPhee. So that's where we are. We established staff established a process. We started with Watt Road. And that was where you were all involved. We were looking for, that crosswalk was what kind of brought those neighbors in. But we went through, we had the pictures and the same process that we kind of went through with Kingston Pike sub-area has been used consistently throughout this process. So we've been consistently using a process to review and adopted and amended our land use plan based on feedback, not just the comprehensive plan itself, but also in citizen input. It was expressed that they thought the density range for medium density was too broad, from 6 to 12 units per acre, and they wanted it to be broken out into medium density and high density. And of course, then we had to go redefine medium density and high density. And in that, we've also redefined a few other areas. So that's kind of what we've been going through, is reviewing the plan. Obviously, you guys, most of you have been on board since we started reviewing the plan and updating it. So that's where we are today. I will say that Mr. Horn's property has been, I was back in the vault for a couple of days last week, just doing some review, and did not know this. Was something I learned. So when the town of Farragut was founded in 1980, we basically had to adopt the map as it was zoned for Knox County, because we did not have a zoning ordinance yet. We did not develop our own zoning ordinance until 1982. Ordinance 82-11, which was adopted March 16th, 1982, where we also adopted the zoning map, which I believe was probably their first shot at doing some kind of land use planning, because the original, when we were founded, the original map, we had a ton of property zoned agricultural. And when they came in with the new zoning ordinance, they rezoned a lot of property, commercial and R1 and R2. So it was very interesting to see. So the Mr. Horn's property has parts of it have been rezoned. Parts of it were residential, and then the commercial part, both Ingalls, the old Ingalls and the new Ingalls, went in there and they rezoned a portion of the residential portion to commercial, and that's where you got the buffer. They added the buffer in, and that was originally R1 or R2, and they put the buffer in. So this property that's existing property that's not developed has been zoned R1 and R2 since 1982. And they're still zoned that way. And there's a use, by right, they have a use to zone under R2 or R1 and build out under R2 or R1. I will say that Baldwin Park, it was interesting because I went back and checked the density, because on the original map that we adopted, Baldwin Park was listed as low density, 3 to 6 units per acre. It's actually 2.34 units per acre, which is why the color has changed. So that's some of the background in all of this. I think the only concern I have, I know that Boring Road right now is, obviously, Mr. Horner has a right to utilize his property, R1 OSR would probably make sense. Some of those properties have subdivided as estate-sized lots. My only question would be J. I know it's written out as rural residential, but it is surrounded by low-density, single-family.
Yeah.
I don't know how the property owner feels about. It would make sense as rural residential, certainly, estate-sized lots, because they already exist there. But I wonder how you fold that into the rest of it. But that's my only observation.
Anybody else have any thoughts or input on this, or?
I just want to say that I see the comprehensive land use plan as it's not legally binding to us. It's more of a plan. It's not the zoning at all. And that comes along when the property is sold or somebody wants to develop it, the zoning, more so than what we do now with the comprehensive land use plan. I guess I see it more as a guide. Am I wrong in that, Mark?
Yeah, that's really what it is. It's, like I said, it's a vision. It's a vision, text, and map. It's very different from zoning outside of the mixed-use town center.
Yeah.
Because that does have more requirements associated with it because of the way it was adopted. But in other areas of the town, it really is just a vision at a moment in time, which as the plan itself talks about, that time needs to be constantly revisited to see if it's still current. You know, things have changed since this was originally mapped that, you know, we didn't necessarily have any control over.
Right.
I mean, there was things that we expected to happen that haven't happened, and there's things that have happened in other parts of the town that have addressed why some of these areas were mapped the way they were originally. So, I mean, and that's things that we've made modifications in all of these areas that we've had community involvement in. We've
Right.
changed the land use plan, the map pretty substantially on Watt Road, and we made some changes to our zoning ordinance. We created the Neighborhood Convenience Commercial District. That was largely came through our discussion, our public meetings with the dealing with the Watt Road corridor. People wanted to have a kind of a scaled down, you know, type of commercial option that would blend in better and transition better, where you've got nearby residential areas that they could perhaps walk to it. And that was kind of the original vision of this part of town, is that old Ingalls would get torn down. And we might have, because it is right there in the central part of town, and it has some existing subdivisions nearby, that could be a walkable mixed-use neighborhood. And the medium-density residential at that time was seen as potentially a land use that could provide for the kind of density that you might need to support that type of development. But again, that's just a map, a vision, a land use. It's not, the zoning has always been, like Louise said, R1 and R2, and that's what you can actually do with the property. And that's, you know, a density of less than 2 units per acre. So.
Can I say something else, Rita? Of course, we built the Ingalls. We sold the land to Ingalls and provided a lot of sales tax for the town. We did Kohl's, we did Walmart, we did CVS. You know, we've done a lot of things for the town too. You leaders have done a lot. Those private leaders have done a lot too. We know, you all know, when you change the land use plan, you bring a zoning request in, Mark knows too, we won't get it. You'll rely on the land use plan. Sure, you say it's a guide, but look at the Eddie Ford example. The land use plan changed. We came in with Eddie to do a mixed-use town center, and we were stricken down because you changed the text amendment on the land use plan. It stopped him from being able to do multifamily. We all are knowledgeable people here. You change the land use plan, we can't get the zoning. So if you change the land use plan that you had in place in 2012 and 2018, went to 6 to 8, we've lost our value. We have no course but to sue. You can't take people's family property away from them. That's what you're doing. So I don't know how to be any more clear about that. Y'all all know I'm right about this.
I was just about to add, the property there in J, and part of that I know is the Borings property. They can sell it to anybody they want to.
But the value's gone, though. You change the land use plan, the value's gone.
It's always been zoned R1. That's what the value is R1.
It's R1, but we were going to file rezoning, Louise, because the land use plan was 6 to 8 per acre. We have a builder, Mike Stevens, you guys know him, that's what we're going to do. And also, I told the mayor, we have an assisted living property that's going to come in there maybe for 10 of the acres, which is another assisted living. But the land use plan is what us private landowners, private property landowners look at as the way you market your property. We marketed this property as mixed, as medium density residential. If you cut our legs out from under us, we've lost our value. So let's don't kid ourselves, Louise. You're kidding yourself.
I'm not kidding myself. I've listened to what the residents have said on several corridors. I understand that.
You need to listen to the property owners. We own the property.
And it's been zoned R1 since 1982. So that's what you have rights to.
No, we have rights to the land use plan.
You don't have rights to the land use plan.
No. So we'll see who's got rights.
So it's getting late. I just wanted to pose one question to this body. Mr. Horn and the community are on opposite sides of this issue clearly, and I don't think we're going to reach agreement tonight. I respect him and what he's done for the community, but this has been an over 7-year skirmish that we've been running with multiple developers coming in and many of the community talking about what their views are, and of course Mr. Horn talking about what his view is. My question for this body is, according to our process in the town, what are next steps? We've collected all the input from the community. We've heard from Horn Properties. What happens next?
We'll let the court decide. That's what happens.
What's the process?
Well, I mean, again, this is just for consideration. So, the next step would be to show some proposed amendments to the future land use map in this case. There may be some other things that come out of all this with like a text amendments and things like that, just like we did with Watt Road.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. So, that would be the next logical step. What we were trying to obtain tonight was just, everyone's feedback on these different areas and what we're thinking about or what we're throwing out as considerations. The rural residential area that Louise was talking about, that could very, very well be very low density residential in some of those areas, I think. I don't really know what that would be kind of compatible with Village Green and, what's kind of surrounding a lot of that. It's not really compatible with how the property is actually currently being used. But those are some considerations. That's one area that I think you could logically look at that as a potential land use for that area as well, because it would be kind of a compatible. It would actually be a higher density, similar to Mr. Horn's property. A lot of that, very low density residential would be a density that's double what its current zoning would allow. So, potentially, again, it's just a vision. It's just, there's nothing that is tied to any requirements with this outside of the mixed-use town center. I think what we're trying to do is take the community input, make some modifications to the map, just like we've done in these other priority areas that seem to be logical, or bring the map in line with existing developments and conditions that have changed over time. That's exactly what we did in all these other areas. There's no difference.
Is that, anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts, but I thought going through these sectors was trying to build a consensus. Doug, don't run off. Doug, don't run off. I may have a question for you. Well, mine too. I think we're about the same age.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I thought these sector plan meetings was trying to build a consensus and I guess this is the first one that's come up where we've really gotten some feedback, and I'm trying to scratch my head. I for one, have always seen this thing, ever since we came up with comprehensive land use plan in 2012, I've kind of struggled with what, some people want to codify it and make it like an ordinance, and which is the incorrect usage. And others, like you're saying, it's more, it's more tied to the value of your land, which I'm scratching my head on that compared to what the actual zoning of the property. If I'm looking at buying that piece of property, I'm looking at what it's zoned for, and I'm the only one that can request to rezone my land unless there's something going to be a taking. At least I'm not a lawyer, but that's my rudimentary understanding.
But let
me ask a question.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with your current zoning?
No, no. What you do, Ed, when you have property and you have a land use plan, you market the property to users that talk to you because of the land use plan shows like this property, medium density residential. And then when you get a deal ready to go, you come in and do your zoning. That's when you ask for the zoning, but that adheres to the land use plan. I wouldn't zone the property until I was ready to actually build on it. And we offered senior living apartments that were, of course, stricken down, like John Holster said, that was stricken down. But we'd offered to widen Boring Road at our expense. Now, that widen Boring Road from Baldwin Park down to Kingston Pike probably cost $1.5 million. And we've offered to do that as long as we adhere to the land use plan. But you never zone the property a different zoning until you're ready to develop it. And we weren't ready to develop it yet. It's got, like I said, we've got another land assisted living users coming in for 10 acres of the 50 acres. We may come in for zoning on that S1 zoning or whatever.
But
we don't want to zone it S1 now because we don't have the deal completely ironed out with the other assisted living user. See?
Well, I will say that.
But if the land use plan throws out a vision that's compatible with what you're thinking, maybe to rezone in the future.
Yeah, that's right.
Then what's the issue?
That's right. No, that's right. It's fine. The medium density residential land use plan is what we've always relied on in talking to builders and talking to other prospects, that it would just be zoned to adhere to the medium density residential. Now you're talking about, because sure, Baldwin Park would rather be cut down to R1 only. Whenever they bought that property, we lost the bid on that property to Saddlebrook at the time by $25,000. We'd rather left it agricultural. We were the next door neighbor. We'd rather it been agricultural, but we got a good Baldwin Park. We did the Waverly Court. We built that ourselves with Saddlebrook when I was a partner with Saddlebrook. But you never zone the property till you're ready to use it, but you do adhere to the land use plan.
But that's back to my
That's the way
point.
developers do.
I'm still scratching my head. If the land use plan would accommodate your future rezoning,
Yeah, it would now.
then what's the issue?
No, it would. It will. But you're talking about changing the land use plan. See? No, it will. The land use plan now
If it's a vision of what
adheres
you
to
have
the,
in the you envision it in the future, then
the 6 to 8
what's
units
the
per
issue?
acre is fine. It's fine. It's what you got on the land use plan. It's fine. Just
Ed
keep
and
it that
Ed and
way.
I have been here a while. And we have. And so until was it 2012? Is that when we did the land?
December 2012.
Okay,
when you adopted.
prior to that, I had never heard of a comprehensive land use plan.
We didn't have one.
We didn't have one.
It was kind
And,
of a new thing.
Well, we had a policy plan,
Had
a
a policy
transportation
plan.
and land use policy plan. The first time we actually mapped the vision was in 2012.
Right, and there was never any discussion about a land use plan. And,
We went through a whole series of meetings and
See,
right,
Ralph
and then at
McGill,
that point, we brought in consultants and they came up with this comprehensive land use plan. But prior to that,
Ralph McGill came to me 15 years ago when he was mayor and said, Doug, you've done a lot in the community. You've helped us a lot with sales tax. What do you envision your property being over on Boring Road? I said, well, 6 to 12 units per acre would be fine. And that's what Ralph got implemented. Then it changed to 6 to 8. And like Ed said, we're happy with 6 to 8. That's good. We'll file for zoning 6 to 8 units per acre. But if you cut us down to 2 or 3 per acre or 4 per acre, that cuts our value of our land down. We've built shopping centers all over the 20-some states, and a lot of times we would get a zoning that was higher than land use plan. You never get zoning less than land use plan. You get zoning higher than land use plan, like commercial shopping center when it called for agricultural, for example. So you know, the private interest in this community with the land, private property rights, you know, you can't just run over people with land use plan changes, because we've been talking to people and marketing our property based on the land use plan. So if you change it, summarily change it again, it kills us, and we have to fight. There's no other choice.
Yeah. Well, thanks, you're helping with my creeping
Our family
comprehension.
would want me to.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments with this? Okay.
Want me to put something together for a recommendation next time?
Please.
Okay. All right.
I believe I just heard Mr. Horn state he was the one who put the idea to have that as medium density to begin with. And it was his idea to make it medium density and his onlys. So that's, you know, he just said, that's what he just said. It was his idea to make it medium density. And that's, most of the people don't want it that way. I know of people who are looking to buy homes in our subdivision, and they don't come on the market that often. There's one that's about ready to come on there now, and they're waiting to have Mr. Horn sell the land to a developer to have a similar type development like Baldwin Park next door to us. Not necessarily with the park, but with the homes. So there's demand for the single-family homes. So I just want to, you know, I'm not getting a good feel from how you folks are thinking about this yet, how you'd consider this. But you know, the other thing you said, you know, that you shot down, this idea for Eddie Ford's property. Well, Hy-Vee currently has a contract on to buy the entire Eddie Ford property, and they're looking at only using the front 20 acres for their grocery store, and they're looking at doing compatible development similar to Glen Abbey and the Park Place on the other side, which seems very ideal. So I take counter to what Doug was saying, that, you know, you guys are shooting down everything he comes up with, but when his ideas aren't proper, I feel fortunate you have shot him down. Thank you.
I would like to make a statement of clarity. The property, the Ford, the development that was proposed for the Ford property didn't get past the Planning Commission because there was no traffic impact study filed. That it couldn't go forward without it. And the transitions policy was what was discussed primarily between Glen Abbey and Park Place.
It was completely different than anything we'd ever considered for
Yeah.
that.
So those issues it was a transition, it wasn't a changes that we made to the land use plan or the definition. It was transitions policy and the fact that a traffic impact study was not done.
Yeah, contrary to all misinformation that's been put out there about that.
Okay, so in this case, I'm moving on to approval of utilities. We have no utilities.
Done.
And citizens forum, is there anyone who wishes to make a comment on something we haven't already discussed?
Well, Doug Horn did sign up for that, but I think he's already left.
He's out in the hall, probably, to see, somebody ask him if he still wants to speak.
All right.
In that case, the August 8th.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Case, the August 18th, 2022 meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mark.